Hello everyone, and welcome to Gaming in the Wild, a video games podcast about games from the artistic, creative side of the tracks, from indie to AAA. My name's John, I'm your host, and this week out in Reykjavik, it's that time of the year, it's getting to the end of the year, and for a video games podcast like mine, that means it's time for the Games of the Year episodes to begin. And last year I had a couple guests on, and I really enjoyed talking to people about the different tastes and flavours and games that people have found, and telling them my own and having a good conversation about the Games of the Year. And so I'm going to do the same thing this year. I'm going to have a few different guests on from podcasts that I listen to, people whose taste I enjoy and people whose podcasts I enjoy. And this is the first episode of this little mini-series for the Games of the Year 2021. And my first guest is the host of the So Videogames podcast and the editor of GameCritics.com, Brad Gallaway. We had a great conversation earlier this year talking about The Longing, a very strange game that we both played and had a lot of thoughts on. It was really fun, so I invited Brad back to be the first Games of the Year guest. It's a long conversation. We talked for over 2 hours. We both got a lot to say about games. Some of Brad's selections I'd heard of, some I haven't. It was really interesting to talk about all of the things that happened in 2021. So we took rather than doing a straight up list, we took some prompts and we talked about different things that went down in 2021, some gaming news, games that surprised us, games that blew our minds out of nowhere, games that disappointed us. It was a really good long chat, and I hope you enjoy it. Because it's such a long episode, it's not going to be a long intro. But allow me to just mention that this show is Patreon supported, so whether it's your first time listening today, or whether you're a long time listener, you're very welcome to come and contribute to the show at patreon.com/gaminginthewild to get sale recommendations, to get extra episodes, and to get an invite to the Discord community, where you can talk to other listeners of the show and talk to me and share the games you're playing. It's a really fun little corner of the internet. Everyone is very nice there, and we just talk about games every day. You're welcome to come and join us. It's patreon.com/gaminginthewild. I'd like to give a big thank you to all of my patrons, and a big thank you to you if that's something that you find interesting. And with all of that said, let's move on. I hope you enjoy the first Games of the Year episode with special guest Brad Gallaway. Alright, so I've got a great guest this week. It's the first end-of-year episode, and I'm very happy to be joined by Brad Gallaway from the So Videogames podcast. Hello, Brad.
Hey, John. Thank you for having me back again. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. I really like these end-of-year episodes, and it's really nice to kick games around with people and find out what they've been playing and what they're... I mean, what's your attitude like towards end-of-year stuff? Are you into it?
Yeah, yes. I think at heart I am a gamer with a capital G, and I think that part of that baggage is that we love lists and we love ranking things and we love numbers, and I think that's just part of the gamer DNA. So I do really like end-of-year stuff. This has been kind of a crazy year for a variety of reasons. So I feel like I'm a little bit off my game, but hopefully I'm going to get my mojo on for the show here today. But in general, yes, I do look forward to what was the best, what was my favorite, just recapping a year. Something feels good about putting a bow on all that. Yeah,
I agree. And I mean, you guys play so much. I feel like your sample size is probably much bigger than mine from the amount of stuff that you guys cover in So Videogames that you and Carlos cover. You must have a lot to go through.
Yeah, it's funny because as I was prepping for the show today, I was going through my notes and I'm like, oh, geez, I got a lot of games to look at because I keep a list of everything that I play. I mean, I post it on Game Critics and I keep a little running tab for myself. And I'm like, oh, gosh, I think I had more than enough to talk about. And I had only gotten through March. And I'm like, well, I still got all these other months to go through. No shortage of stuff to talk about this year for sure.
And I skipped this part. I should have started off with this and led with this, but how are you and how has your year been and how are things where you are?
Oh yes, personal concerns. How strange. I'm good. I am very busy. This has been an unusual year for me. I don't know how many people know this on your listener base, but people who listen to So Videogames or at Game Critics, they know that I'm a stay-at-home dad. And I love doing that. It's been like kind of a lifelong dream come true. So that's been very busy with COVID concerns and trying to keep my son busy and giving him activities and enriching things to do. And on top of that, my wife, who is the main breadwinner for our family, which I love and I'm so grateful for her for doing it, she's had a very busy year, what with COVID and whatnot. And it's funny that my wife and I both are in the same field. And in fact, I was doing the exact same job she's doing now 20 years ago. So we are a good team, and I've been really helping her out with stuff that she needs. And, it's just, life has kind of taken over and games have taken a little bit of a backseat, which is weird because games have been my primary focus for more than 20 years. But, now that we're talking about the year-end stuff, and now that I'm looking back, I'm like, okay, well, I still did play some games. I still am a gamer. I got some stuff in this year, but boy, life is just kind of crazy right now. I mean, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm good. I've been working from home this year, so it's been a change for me. But I mean, here in Iceland, you probably know, but this time of year gets kind of extreme. It's very dark all the time. It's just a few hours of sunlight every day. And so it's kind of hard to navigate. It throws your sleep out of whack and everyone feels a little groggy. So it's that time of year. But I don't know, working from home helps. My home is set up very comfortably and cozily, so I'm just sailing through it.
I have to ask you, I am very curious. I don't know anything about Iceland, but I have to imagine that maybe that particular culture is big on games because it's probably something you can do year-round indoors, whether it's warm or cold, light or dark. I mean, do you notice that the Icelandic people are big on games?
I mean, anecdotally, it seems that way. There's like a kind of an Icelandic eBay. There's like an Icelandic everything. There's like an Icelandic eBay called bland.is, and I occasionally pop on there. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people selling games to each other. But it's such a tiny country. There's only a couple games stores, so I don't really collect physical games for that reason. But there's a console in every house, I'm sure. I think it is big here, and it does make sense with the weather. Absolutely, it's the perfect thing to do at this time of the year.
Excellent. I have to ask you also, this is totally off the point and I apologize for derailing, but do you eat a lot of fish? I hear that people eat a lot of fish in Iceland. Is that true?
Yeah, I do. And the fish that you get here is absolutely top class, straight out of the water, very fresh. It's from the glacial water that's melting off Iceland, so it's really clean water out there. But you trade that off against vegetables because everything's grown in a greenhouse. It's never hot. It's never sunny. And so the vegetables are terrible, but the fish is awesome. That is a true rumor.
I might be willing to make that trade because I'm a big fish fan. I love vegetables too, but boy, it's tough to get a real good piece of fish. So maybe I'll have to take a trek out there and maybe you can show me the good fish spots around where you live.
Absolutely. Anytime. But, so what's been in the gaming world, right? Last night was the Game Awards, and as I've said, I'm not sleeping great. It's winter. It started at 1 a.m. here and ran through until 4 a.m., and I have been pretty sleepless and night owly, so I stayed up and watched it. I've understood from listening to from you and Carlos sparring on the subject that you are not the biggest fan of these Game Awards, with very good reason, I think. They are a very kind of money-based, success-based, AAA-focused event, but it is the talk of the town at the moment, at least in my Twitter timeline, and I'm sure in yours as well. And so it seems like it would be a good time to have a quick glance at the winners and losers and take a temperature on it. Did you have time to cast your eyes over it?
I knew it was happening, and like you said, it was in all the Twitter feed, and everybody in my circle was talking about it. I had several friends who went down to be in the audience, and a couple of my friends were on stage, and so that's great. I'm very excited for them because, I'm sure it must feel a little bit like reclaiming a little bit of normal life, now that we've been through COVID for so long and so many things are still off limits. So, I'm happy in that respect for them. But yeah, I have not been traditionally the greatest fan of the Game Awards. I don't watch it all the way through because 3 hours, real talk, dude, I'm super busy every single day. And if I can squeeze in like 1 hour of game, I'm thrilled. And to take 3 hours to watch something when I know that if I wait till afterwards, I can read an article in maybe 5 minutes and I'll watch the trailers in maybe half an hour. I find it very difficult to sit down and devote that time to something that I have a strong feeling I'm not going to be that entertained by, I have to say. Sounds brutal, but it's true.
I feel the same. You probably know my story. I dropped out of gaming for a while, came back a couple of years ago, and so the Game Awards wasn't really a thing when I was a gamer back in the 2010s. And so I get excited for it, and I have all 3 years that I've been playing games and slightly interested. But then every time I end up watching it or scanning the articles and coming away feeling kind of mad about it and kind of like my favorites didn't win. And I've got objections to the winners. And it's kind of the same this year. I mean, it's been, I guess there weren't any big front runners. It's not like there was a Last of Us 2 this year to sweep the board. It felt very open before the awards. And I think it did come down in quite an interesting spread in some ways. But I mean, were there any that sprang out to you as interesting?
I mean, I guess it depends what you mean by interesting. I mean, I was reading the winners, scanning the articles, and I have to say I was very, very taken aback by what won Game of the Year. I mean, I don't know if you want to start with the big one, but when I saw that, my jaw just dropped, and I could hardly believe it.
Yeah, I actually had that one here because I believe it also won the Best Family Game. And that's a category that I was going to ask you about because I know that you play a lot of games in the family situation. And I seem to remember that you played It Takes Two this year and came away with a bit of a negative take on it. So is that right?
Oh my gosh. I have so many feelings about It Takes Two. Mm-hmm. I've played every game from the director, Joseph Fares. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And apologies if that's wrong. And this particular game, I mean, I can see it has appeal, right? Like it's colorful. The mechanics are very clever. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're groundbreaking. I think that they're just really done very well, where you take two people playing at the same time, and each task is divided between the two of you. So one person, for example, will lay a platform, the other person has to jump on it, or one person has to carry something, and the other person has to like clear the path. You know, like it's done very well. So it's smooth, it makes sense, and from that respect, I think it's really well done. But the part that just sticks to my craw is the script. The script is a nightmare. I was constantly looking at my wife going, oh my God, can you believe that they said that? Oh my God, why are we watching this? What is happening? It honestly feels like Fares has an axe to grind against maybe like an ex or something, and he's kind of taking it out in this game as therapy. And it really bothered me. I mean, on how the two characters relate to each other, and also more specifically, how they don't really care about their daughter, who is ostensibly the goal of the game is to save the daughter, get her back to safety. And like 3/4 of the game, it's like as if the daughter doesn't exist. And they do, I'm not going to spoil anything here, but they do some stuff in that game that is horrifying as a parent and horrifying as a partner to someone. And it hurts my heart to hear that so few people called that out. And it makes me wonder, does this seem normal to a lot of people? And if so, that is a tragedy for the human race.
Right. I mean, you're not the only person to have said this, actually. I think from what I've scanned on my timeline, people who have played it like the gameplay, and they like that it seems to refresh itself constantly.
Yes.
And there's always something new to do. But I haven't heard any praise for the script, really, apart from, I think it was the guys on Zero Punctuation, who are kind of the shock jocks of games journalism anyway, who found it hilarious, just because I think it was so offbeat. But it's an interesting one. It's interesting for a mandatory co-op game to win it. That's not the usual winner, is it? It's normally like a third-person AAA action-adventure. Now we have like a co-op indie game.
Yeah, it's kind of like the monkey's paw, right? Where I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm constantly wishing for something else to win. And hey, we got it this year. A co-op game, an ostensibly family-focused game. But boy, that script makes it really hard to embrace. So I guess we got our wish, but maybe not like, this is not how I wanted it, you know?
Sure. Right. I mean, the ones that really got my goat were the indie game, because that's my sphere. That's where I spend most of my time playing. I had played all of the games in that category, and I had strong thoughts about all of them. And the debut indie category, which was a new category, I guess, to reward people that weren't getting on the ladder somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least that's what it seemed like at first. But then Kena Bridge of Spirits swept both of them, which is, I've played it, I've reviewed it on the show, I gave it a mixed review. Have you played that one?
I have not played it, but you know, I've looked into it. We reviewed it at our site, so I've talked to the person who writes for me who played it, and you know, my wife was looking at it, and it looked all well and good, and I'll probably will pick it up when it hits on sale or something. But it's funny because if you had asked me to pick maybe 5 or 10 indies this year, that would not have even been on the list, and I don't know that I even had categorized it in my brain as being an indie.
Right, and that's where the problem lies for me, actually, because I mean, looking at that category, there's such good stuff in there. Sable was in the best debut indie, a big favourite of mine. Chicory was in there. Inscryption was in there. Really interesting games that did something cool. And then you have Kano, which is like, in my mind, it's a kind of a AAA knockoff to some degree. It's got bits of God of War, bits of Fallen Order, bits of Horizon Zero Dawn. It seems like it's aping the big boys, if you know what I mean. And that's, to me, not what's fun about indie games. It's not what should be celebrated about indie games. It's not trying to scrape into the AAAs just by the skin of your fingernails. It's actually doing other things. And Chicory and Inscryption and Sable did other things. And that's where indie games are really interesting to me. It's like games as culture, games as an artistic medium. And then we get this kind of AAA-ish, lightweight AAA game that wins both of them. And that I was not happy about that. I did a little rant on Twitter about that one myself.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. I mean, I didn't even think of it as an indie. It wouldn't have come up in my mind. I don't really see it as that. It definitely is shooting for that like upper tier, like AA, or, just like you said, edging on the edge of AAA. And it's, I mean, not to disparage the game, because again, I haven't played it. I'm just speaking about what I've seen and what I know. But I mean, nothing about that is like experimental or particularly artistic in terms of like exploring the boundaries of what gaming can do. It's a solid formula, right? Like it's third person platforming action. It's like, got some cute characters. It's nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, I'm not disparaging it, but it's it seems a mismatch for this category.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a 15-person studio from a bunch of guys that have been working on Pixar movies. It's tenuously indie, to say the least. Yeah. Doesn't have that spirit, doesn't have that energy, for me anyway. Yeah, agreed. I mean, I was happy to see Metroid pick something up, just as a lifelong Nintendo fan. That was fun to see. I don't have a lot of feeling on Metroid. I am a Metroid fan, but I skipped that one this year because the reception was so mixed. I was like, I'm so picky when I buy games for full price. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I am Mr. On Sale. And I don't know if that makes me a bad person or what. People can judge me if they like, but like I so rarely buy anything for full price, and Nintendo stuff so rarely ever goes on sale. It's like I have to be absolutely convinced of something before I drop enough money for a Nintendo game. And that one just like, I just haven't really been on board with Metroid lately. I still call myself a fan, but when I started hearing about the difficulty and some of the control issues, I was like, I held off. So I didn't try that one this year. Right, I picked up a physical copy of it because it was, I think, 30 quid on Amazon at some point for a secondhand one. So I have a copy of it. It's actually the game that I'm planning to dip into across the holidays this year. I tend to keep one game behind my ear for the break that I know that I'm going to be able to get my teeth into, and that's Metroid this year. So I haven't played that one. I also haven't played Deathloop. There were a few that I didn't play from all of these Game Awards selections. I think I'm going to wait for Deathloop to be on Game Pass, seeing as it's Bethesda. That's a smart move. I mean, it's funny you say that because as I'm scanning the list, I have not played many of these. I mean, I've played a fair amount, but most of these are like, I mean, I don't want to sound like all arch and like I'm looking down my nose at anything, but like, I tend to spend most of my time with indie games, with experimental games, with artistic games, with stuff that is, maybe it's rough, but it's got an interesting idea. They're trying some new concepts, and just a lot of that stuff just doesn't make it to the Game Awards. I mean, look, we're talking about the indie winner, and that I don't think even remotely category qualified. So I mean, most of the stuff like Deathloop, I mean, I'm like, okay, not my bag. And like Forza is not something I traditionally would spend time with. And like all these other games, I mean, Genshin Impact, I think I played it for a minute. So, a lot of these, I'm just like, okay, maybe I'm just not the right consumer. I'm not in the right category for this kind of award show. Right. Do you like any of the award shows? I mean, I'm not that familiar with them, but I have the DICE Awards do a podcast where they take the judges and they have a little chat with them all, and that seemed quite good. It seemed perhaps more, and I'm a little more warm on the BAFTAs more than the Game Awards too. I feel like the Game Awards is like the most commercial in quite a commercial field. I mean, I guess some of the game sites as well, where the critics just bring their games to the table. I do like a good end of year roundup, but I haven't really attached to any of these awards things as yet. No, if I'm going to read something, I usually seek out the writers that I like or the sites that I like or people whose opinions I respect.
Not that they necessarily have to match up with mine, but people who put some thought into what they're doing. And, people who I really appreciate the work that they do. Having been in the field for so long, I've got my favorites, and I've got my eye on people who, maybe they have a following, maybe they don't, but, I like to see what they pick. And that's where I get the best stuff, when I kind of like go, not the path most traveled, but I go the path, like that branches off to the left and something that goes somewhere else. And I love those kind of wrap-ups. And my favorite wrap-ups of all are the ones where it's like it's the top 10 games you probably didn't play this year. I love those ones because I try my best to scan all the releases. I try to get on to the Xbox store, the PSN store, and Switch. Every Tuesday, Wednesday when the store refreshes. I really try to keep an eye on that stuff. And I look for the stuff that's not as celebrated or not as big. But I love, there's no way one person can do it all. And I love rather than the top 10, but the ones where it's like the most overlooked or the most under the radar or the weirdest. Those are my jam, really. Those are where I really thrive at the end of the year.
Okay, well, we've done our due diligence and we've chatted about the Game Awards, and now we can get on to talking about the good stuff. Rather than doing a kind of a formal Games of the Year podcast, because you and Carlos do a great one at the end of every year, and I've listened to the last few of those and really enjoyed them.
Thank you.
It's nice to hear what you guys bring to the table. It's always so different. It's great to hear you sparring and bringing your choices. So I thought that rather than preempting your own Games of the Year show, what we could do is just come up with a couple of questions about the year that was, and just bring a few games to the table in different categories as starting points. And so we've got 11 categories here. And why don't we just dive right in?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first one that I've got here is it's looking back to the start of the year, and it's way back at the start of 2021. I don't know about you, but I had a little short list of games that I had kind of had on the back of my mind that had been pushed into 2021 or not come out yet, games that I was anticipating. And so the first category we've got here is a game that you were looking forward to at the start of the year, and how did it measure up? Did it meet your expectation?
Excellent. I love this category because, it's always tough to have expectations because, very often you're disappointed, and that's just a really bad feeling. But it is great when something comes out and it does deliver what you're wanting. And for me, something that I was really looking forward to and something that actually did deliver for me is Monster Hunter Rise. I mean, it's from Capcom. I'm a big Monster Hunter guy from way back in the day. I've played all the games. I mean, we're talking probably thousands of hours into the series, like over a lifetime. And I wasn't too in love with Monster Hunter World, and which is ironic because that was the big breakthrough for the series. They finally hit the biggest audience ever. They brought it to like a big boy console where they had the full 3D graphics and all the bells and whistles. And that was the one that really, got them the larger stage, got them the attention that they've been wanting for all these years. I mean, Monster Hunter, I think it must be a 15 or 20 year franchise. So that was weird for me as a longtime fan to see the biggest success in Rise be the one that I really didn't care for that much. So I was kind of pinning my hopes on Monster Hunter Rise. I heard it was a little bit of a return to form. I heard that they were getting, back to basics a little bit. They were kind of getting away from some of the big AAA stuff that they had done with Rise. And that's exactly what they delivered. They took the best stuff from Rise, the stuff that worked, and it was definitely not a bad game at all. And they took some of the stuff from previous in the series, the older stuff, and kind of married it together. And then they also cut away all the fat. It is the leanest and meanest Monster Hunter that's ever been. It's so quick. It's so to the point. I mean, of course, caveat, that's relative because Monster Hunter is a famously slow glacial series in some ways. But in this case, if you're familiar with the past games, this one feels like it moves at lightning speed. And so that was really great. And it's just like all killer, no filler. And I really, really enjoyed what they did. I thought they had smart decisions. I loved how they just got right to it, gave me the best stuff possible, and I really enjoyed it. So that one met expectations, and I'm so glad that it did.
Right. I've never played a Monster Hunter game, and I've thought about it a bunch of times and seen them on sale and seen Iceborne and a couple of things that were on maybe Game Pass. I don't know. I think maybe there was one on Game Pass. But people talk about this being a very hard series to get into and that it's not welcoming to new Monster Hunter gamers. Do you think that this one is a good starting point for someone like me that hasn't played them? I
would say it is the best starting point with the caveat that it is still an extremely difficult and not super friendly starting point. So it's better than it's ever been. But it's tough. And that's been my lifelong criticism of the series is they don't really do a great job of walking players through the systems and really the nuances. It's all about specifics and details and little bits and bobs and lots of like, arcane knowledge that's just really tough to gather if you're not doing the wikis, if you haven't been playing the games for a long time. So if you were going to pick one, I would absolutely say pick Rise. But not that it's going to be easy, not that it's going to be a walk in the park. You have to really want to get into Monster Hunter. And if you're just casually checking out, I think those people are going to bounce, and rightfully so. But if you are going to get one, this is the one to get.
Right. Maybe that is one I'll keep an eye out. I'm very curious about it. Just haven't quite gotten there yet, but I'm glad to hear that one did it for you.
Oh, very much so. I couldn't be happier with it, and I'm really looking forward to the expansion. I believe there's a whole new land, new monsters, just big expansion coming next year, so me and the wife are going to jump into that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually wrote a little list at the start of this year for the Radical Art Review. My friend Kieran runs this website, and I do a couple games articles here and there for them. So I actually had a piece to go back and look at to see exactly what I did actually pick at the start of the year. And I'm kind of glad that I did, because I think it would have all left my mind by now if that wasn't there. But the very first game that I mentioned in that piece was Solar Ash, which just came out, and it was obviously the follow-up to Hyper Light Drifter by Heart Machine. And I'd been a huge fan of Hyper Light Drifter, having struggled through that quite difficult pixel art game and felt very good about it afterwards, and come out feeling like had something special. It had something aesthetic, something interesting, something a little different. There was a seed of creativity and vision in the core of that game that I really responded to, and it came through the graphics, the music, and the strange, obscure storytelling. And so Solar Ash, I was very excited to see what Alex Preston would do with a bigger budget. Obviously, it was on the PS5 launch lineup when that trailer dropped for PS5. And again, for me, this one really did deliver. I played it in 3 days, in 4 sittings, and 12 hours, and I was up until the early hours, having forgotten that I was even playing games. It just completely swept me up. And I was a huge fan of Solar Ash. It's like Hyper Light Drifter springing into 3D. It has that same visceral, existential feeling that made Hyper Light Drifter so different to other pixel games. And it feels like they really smashed it out of the park. And so that was a great one for me too. It's a game that I was looking forward to. And I had my doubts about it. It was delayed a couple of times, and it was getting towards the end of the year. The review copies came out late, and I was thinking these are all bad signs. It's going to be buggy, it's going to be glitchy, but actually, not at all. They finished the game, no crashes, no bugs, no problems, and I really enjoyed that one. Have you gotten to Solar Ash yet, or was that one on your radar?
It was on my radar because the trailer dropped and it was very eye catching, and I kind of forgot about it. Like you said, the delays and things, and there's so many games that come through my wheelhouse anyway. But I have played it. I think I played the first 2 worlds, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's super stylish. It's smooth. I like the way it feels. I like the just the visuals, just the overall style of it is really nice, and I like it very much. I haven't finished it. Trying to chip away at that, but yeah, it's good stuff for sure.
Right, you've got some good stuff to look forward to then. Some of those bosses in the later worlds are really, really something.
Excellent. No spoilers. Don't spoil me.
No spoilers. just that it's good. Just that it's good.
Okay. Fair enough.
And so the next category we've got here is the opposite of that. It's a game that was a surprise, that seemed to come out of nowhere, that just dropped into your lap. There's always a few like that, There's games that we hear about, and there's games that just seem to come out of the woodwork. And so what was your surprise of the year this year?
Gosh, I had a couple, and I tried to space them out throughout the different categories we're going to talk about. But I got to say, the biggest surprise, I kind of laugh about this one. The biggest surprise was for me on the Switch. It's Steampunk Tower 2. I don't imagine you've even heard of it.
Steampunk, I was thinking of Steam World. It's probably not connected to that, is it?
Not even remotely connected. I didn't know anything about this game. It showed up in the Switch library randomly. I think it was like, $1.50 or something ridiculous. I mean, it was less than $5, certainly. It was very cheap. Didn't know anything about it, and I just picked it up because I liked the screenshots. Something about them spoke to me. Come to find out that it is a port of, I believe, just like a mobile game or something. But what it is basically is it's a tower defense game, but you only have one tower. And instead of you setting up towers all over the place, you are one tower in the middle, and everybody comes to you. And so they kind of flip it on its head a little bit. I love the aesthetic of it. And it was just really neat because you could play it in really bite-sized chunks. And the aesthetic of the game, Steampunk, of course, was in this tower, you could interchange the little turrets. So like you'd have a really tall tower. You'd have maybe 5 turrets on the left, 5 turrets on the right. They portrayed it in a 2D setting. So you're only dealing with people from the left and the right. And something about like moving those little guns around and reloading the guns and growing the tower higher and lower. It just all came together, and I just could not get over myself how much I enjoyed it. It's strange because it seems like the kind of like looking at it, just mobile junk, whatever. I should just pass this up, but I jumped in for whatever reason. I rinsed that game. I went through everything. I got all the secret stuff. I did all the challenges. I rarely do that with a game, and I just found it to be so perfect and so neat. I love the design of it, and I know that nobody in the world has heard of it. So if I can get a couple people to play Steampunk Tower 2 from being on the show, then I'll call that job done.
Right, I'm trying to picture it in my mind. So you're looking at the side of the tower, and you've got people coming from the left and right, and you arrange your weaponry to fend them off, basically, right?
Exactly.
What's the art style like? Is it pixel, or is it...
It's kind of it's kind of a silhouette. So everything is shown in 2D, but it's just black outlines of everything. So it's not overly busy. It's not pixely. It's just like kind of like hand-drawn shapes that are in silhouette, which I found to be very appealing and stylish, and it worked really well on the Switch because you could very quickly discern shapes. You could visually discern things right away, and they were attractive looking. There's like nice animation and everything, but you weren't trying to like screw your eyes really close to find out what's going on. Like it was at a glance, you could tell where you were weak and where you were strong. And it just was very readable, very playable. Oh man, I love it.
And is the gameplay, would you say that it's leaning towards strategy or arcade or somewhere in the middle?
Gosh, it's kind of in the middle because there's definitely some strategy. Each gun is good against one type of enemy. So of course there's the balance of what kind of enemies are here, what kind of guns will I need, but you can change them and rotate them around. And so sometimes let's say you've got a shotgun on the left because you know that foot soldiers are coming on the left. Oh, there's some foot soldiers on the right. You better move the gun that's on the right, get that out of the way, move the one that's on the left back over to the right. So you're kind of like juggling your tower around in real time. And also you're kind of managing enemies on both sides. And it's also about the upgrade tree for each gun. I think there was 2 or 3 or 4 versions of each gun. So it was about how you wanted to invest your resources and which areas you were going to conquer. I mean, it's all very simple and straightforward. I don't mean to make it sound very complicated, but it's just really well done. And there was just enough to make me feel like I was digging my teeth in without being overwhelmed. But it was simple enough that I could play it for a couple rounds before bed, and I didn't really need to remember what I was doing last time, or I did, nothing really to catch up on, didn't need an FAQ. So it had a really great balance of complexity and simplicity, approachability and strategy. Like it was just in the middle of all those Venn diagrams. It just hit in a right spot for me.
Lovely. I love a game like that. I love one that you can pick up and drop and not have to, remember a million controls, and it just gets a basic formula and nails it in an interesting way.
Absolutely. I definitely recommend this one. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but for me, so perfect. I loved it so much.
Okay, well, I will check that one out. It sounds like, did you say it was just a couple bucks as well?
Oh, I think it's like $2 or $3 or something. It's really cheap, yeah.
I will definitely check that out based on your recommendation, especially for that price. So what I've got for my surprise of the year here it actually is a Game Awards game, so maybe it's not that big of a surprise, but it was a surprise to me, and that is Chicory, A Colourful Tale. This one came out, it looked cute, it looked like, there's a lot of games that come out that are kind of Zelda-like, top-down, pretty indie game that seems kind of cute, kind of interesting. There's a lot of that kind of game, and so when Chicory came out, I sort of filed it to one side, and I thought, sure, yeah, I'll try that out at some point. It seems like a post-short hike, like a fun little game to try sometime. And didn't think about it much more until it was on sale later in the year, even though it's not expensive to begin with. I also am a big sale guy, much like yourself, because if you're going to play a lot of games, and you have to make this work somehow,
Absolutely.
So picked it up on sale, and it actually blew my mind how good it was. I was really taken aback by this one. I hadn't heard about it before. Maybe you had. I don't know. Had you heard of this one coming into the year, or was this just came out of nowhere?
I mean, I had heard of it just because I scan everything, but it didn't stand out to me in any way. And this is one where you bring color back to the world. Is that right?
Exactly, yeah.
I have to admit, I am biased against those games. I don't know what it is, but something about bringing color back to a black and white world I find I am allergic to. And so I kind of, it's a very specific thing to not like. And I realize that. I don't know why that is, but I kind of avoided it, but it was kind of on my radar. And then I started seeing people say more and more good things. And then I heard you cover it on the show and you were just like over the moon with it. So it put it back on my radar. Haven't played it, but I will.
Yeah, right. So it does have that painting mechanic. So it's a top-down Zelda-like with a line-drawn world. It looks a little bit like the main character reminds me of like a Snoopy or something, just kind of running around this Zelda world, screen to screen. And you do have a brush mechanic. It's like Microsoft Paint. You just get a big brush and you are given the brush of power, and you're a cleaner. You're not this big artist guy, but you end up with this brush of power that colors the world for some reason. And your character is this naive little dog who takes the brush and is like, okay, that can be me. Sure, I'll give it a try. And so what you proceed to do is walk around this black and white world that's in crisis because the artist, Chicory, is absent. And you can't really paint well. That's the funny thing about it. So you're in charge of bringing colour to the world. You're in charge of making the world beautiful again. And all you do really is make a giant mess all over this world with your brush and your palette. But the thing that surpassed expectation for me and that put Chicory into the next category up was actually the writing and the story. It turns out that the artist Chicory, it's not a big spoiler to say, you find this out right at the start, but Chicory is having a bit of a hard time. Chicory isn't really capable of wielding the brush. Chicory is having some mental and emotional issues. And that's not something that I was expecting to get out of this cute little game. But as I was playing through it, the writing and the way that the story develops was very, very engaging and interesting and went quite far on that topic, I would say, much further than I was expecting from a cute top-down game like this. And as for the gameplay, it's just an incredibly well-done 2D Zelda-like in a way that I consider it better than most of the latter-day entries into the Zelda series in the 2D Zelda-like Zelda games. So it's just a superlative example of an old favorite genre of mine with this really beautiful and engaging story to it. Really surpassed expectations, and I wasn't expecting much from it. So that was a good one, a big one for me this year was Chicory, A Colourful Tale.
You sold me on it. I mean, I wasn't going to look into it, but after hearing you praise it so much and talking with you about it now, you forced my hand, John. I have to play it now.
Right, and I mean, it is quite funny that your character is just so bad at art and is forced to take this brush, and you do have to, especially if you're playing on the Switch, you're using a stick to move the brush around, and I always hate mouse controls on a controller. It's like a pet hate of mine. It's why I'll usually play deck builders on a computer if I can, because I often find that they just crunch up and mangle the controls, and it's just not a natural fit. But something about the fact that your character is supposed to be quite a naive artist, to say the least, means your difficulty painting matches their difficulty in making their art, if you know what I mean. So it just seems to click together in some funny way. It's clumsy in that painting mechanic, but it's story-relevant clumsiness, I think.
I love when those things kind of come together, thematic and gameplay and different elements all like work holistically to provide a good experience. It's wonderful when it happens.
Yeah, it really was a good one. I'll be very curious to hear what you think of that one if you get to it sometime.
Will do.
But the next category is, of all of that high praise for those games that we've just given, the next one is letdowns. This is games that you had high hopes for and that didn't live up to expectation, so the opposite of that first category. I've got two here, and I couldn't decide which one to go for, but please go first and tell me what you came up with for this one.
Oh, gosh. Would you mind if you went first? Because I'm having a very hard time deciding. I need like a few more moments to think. Would it be putting you on the spot to ask you to go first?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I try and keep Gaming in the Wild like a positive recommender podcast. I try to. But occasionally I'll pick something up that I've really got my eye on that I think would be right for the show, and I'll play it. If it's just not great, then I'll often just let it slide off the list and maybe mention it in some way. But if it's specifically bad in a way that gets to me somehow, or gets my mind whirring, and I feel like I've got something useful to say about it, like a critique of it, then I will put it into the show. And I guess maybe you could see this one coming, but I've got 12 minutes here for this category.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yes.
It's a game that most people have probably heard of. It was on Annapurna Interactive. It's got some big-name Hollywood actors voicing it, including Willem Dafoe and Daisy Ridley. It's top-down murder mystery, point-and-click adventure. And it looked great from the trailer. Like, the trailers did a really good job of showing this one off in a positive light. There's a husband-wife in a small apartment, and you're looking directly top-down. So we're not talking Zelda here. It's like you're seeing the top of their head and their frame. And in the trailer, you could see them dancing, you could see them eating, and just living in their tiny apartment. The whole game happens in that tiny apartment. And then there's a home invasion in the game in which a kind of enraged cop breaks in, bursts in. And it all seemed quite interesting to me. It seemed like an interesting take. I hadn't seen a game like that before. But as I was playing it, my heart sank pretty quickly on this one when I realized that it was a point-and-click adventure, basically. And as previously discussed, mouse controls on controllers don't do it for me. So I was thinking, oh God, here we go. It's going to be a struggle. I knew that from the first few seconds. It's going to at least be a mechanical struggle to get through it. If I'm trying to find small objects and pixel hunting. And it turned out to have like an unreformed take on a point-and-click adventure. Which is not what it said on the tin for me. I really wasn't expecting this to be an old-school point-and-click with all of the problems of that genre, which include pixel hunting, not being able to see objects clearly, moon logic puzzles, and everything that made point-and-click kind of fall away as a relevant genre and become a dated genre. And to a lot of people, it's a classic genre, but to me, it hung itself with those gameplay problems. And so 12 minutes was a point-and-click, not a good one, and the writing was atrocious. There were things that made me feel very uncomfortable in this game. There are moments at which you have to mistreat a character in the game, and you have to do it repeatedly because it's on a time loop, and it just made me feel very queasy, and I came away from that game actually feeling quite kind of mad with it, and like I needed to rant about it and talk about it, and it turns out that a lot of people felt that way. Did you play 12 minutes for the show, or was it Carlos that played it? I can't remember.
I believe that Carlos played it. It was one that I was very, very much looking forward to, and I hadn't gotten around to it. And within 5 minutes after it getting released, I started hearing all the negativity pour in, so I crossed it off my list, and I did not bother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you did the right thing there. Even though it's on Game Pass, I mean, I was very happy to see it on Game Pass, and yeah, that was a real stinker of a game. I'm still kind of... There were some critical articles that came out where people gave their take and tore into the story and the writing a little bit, and the odd, queasy storyline that's just really, really off, especially in the climate of the year. The kind of the mistreatment that goes on in there and the way that the player is made complicit in it just felt very, very wrong to me. So 12 minutes was a letdown mechanically as a game, but also the subject matter was just way off for me.
Yeah, I that's exactly what I was hearing, and it is kind of cringeworthy to read about some of those things. I spoiled myself. I read through synopsis and people's detailed takes, and I'm just like, wow. I guess in retrospect, I'm very glad I did not take the time to play that. I would have been mad at the end of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did force myself to go through to the end of it just to have a complete take on it and see if it redeemed itself. I don't know. It was one of those games that you end up hate playing. It's not something that I like to do often. I like to enjoy my gaming time, and so I tend to just kick games that I'm not into to the curb, but sometimes they do, I don't know, for some reason, just want to get through it and have a complete opinion. And the full 12 minutes episode is out there if anyone wants to hear me really go for it.
I mean, I'm with you. I don't like to hate play either because life is too short and there's so many good games out there. Why should you spend time on something, like, I will admit though, I have done it in recent times. I mean, I think probably the last hate play that I got into was probably Cuphead. I played that on the hardest difficulty setting and finished it all the way through because I wanted to be able to, I mean, real talk, I wanted to shit talk it from start to finish, and I couldn't have done that if I hadn't finished the whole thing, so no one could say I didn't do my due diligence on that one. Mm-hmm.
Were there any games for you that didn't cut the mustard?
Yeah, I gotta say, well, okay, I have two. If I can give you two, that's all right, or should I just pick one?
No, shoot.
Okay, so the one that I was really looking forward to, but ended up just being kind of miserable, was the remake of Diablo 2. It was so hyped, and it's a game that I actually have never played. I do enjoy that kind of top-down, kind of loot genre, dungeon crawl sort of a thing. I liked Diablo 1 a lot. I like Diablo 3, the latest iteration of it anyway. And, for many years, not really being a PC player, Diablo 2 was just like rubbed in my face from everybody I knew as the best, the best, the best.
Mm-hmm.
Got the best systems, the best, skill tree, the best, strategy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like everything. It was like, even today, many people were saying it was the best in the genre ever. And I felt like I was missing something, like a big hole in my library. Being a critic, I feel like I have the responsibility to have a broad base of knowledge and to try many different things. And this was like one of the glaring holes in my library that I've never touched. So I was so thrilled to see that they were going to remaster it and bring it back. And I thought, oh, here's my chance. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to love this. And wow, I think a lot of people have some severely rose-colored glasses with this one. I can imagine it being great back in the day, but it absolutely does not hold up. It feels so dated, so old, so clunky, so slow, and so repetitive. I was just playing it and thinking, like, is this it? Am I playing the wrong version? Is this the thing that people told me was so great all these years? And I just... it was like so long between getting good weapon drops and fighting the same enemies over and over and over with no real strategy to it. And the skill trees were so small. And there's already like an optimal build. Like, people were telling me, oh, well, if you put one skill point into this one thing, well, then you're screwed up. You might as well start over because you're never going to get to the optimal build. And I'm like, I don't want to play like that. Like, that's crazy. Maybe that made sense back in the day, but we have advanced so far from there. I had a frown on my face the entire time. I could not believe it.
Mm-hmm. Right, and especially with, I haven't never played a Diablo game, but it looks from screenshots something similar to perhaps Hades. Is that way off the mark? Like top-down dungeon crawler?
Very, very vague sense, yeah, I think so. But it's definitely more about like equipping loot and just grinding, just straight up grinding. It doesn't have the articulation of the weapons or anything like that, like Hades does, or not even like Diablo 3 does, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that's a shame to hear that. I've never played a Diablo game. I sometimes see the trilogy on sale, and I consider it, like you say, because of the love that people have for it. But I've never quite dived in.
If you're going to do any of those, I would say just go straight to the most recent version of Diablo 3. The other ones, at this point in modern time, are not really worth going back to. Mm-hmm. But the other one that really kind of like let me down, I don't imagine many people have heard of this one. It's called Buildings Have Feelings Too. Do you know this one?
I don't, but that's a great name.
It is a great name. I was looking for it. It popped up at a PAX many years ago, at least 3 or 4, maybe even 5 years ago. I played a demo of it on the floor at PAX, and I thought it was so cute. It's a puzzle game that stars buildings which are alive, and the premise of it was you needed to have more people move into your building, and how you do this was by making the buildings. They have little feet on them, by the way, little feet and arms. It's very cute. They walk back and forth. They rearrange themselves on a block. So let's say that you've got an apartment building, and you park him next to the restaurant. Well, people are going to want to live there because it's so convenient to food. But if you move the apartment building next to like a factory, people will leave because of the smoke and the pollution and so forth. And so you're trying to like find the optimal block layout. So you want to move everything so that everything's happy where it is. And the buildings have feelings too, like it says right in the title. And so you want to keep the buildings happy, keep the people happy. It looked very cute, approachable. I really wanted to play it. And then it just like vanished off the radar for a couple years. Didn't hear anything about it. And then it popped back up this year, and I was so excited that it didn't just disappear into the ether. And when I finally got to sit down with it, I just was so disappointed because it took this really basic, simple idea and just wildly overcomplicated it with like menus tucked inside of menus, tucked inside of menus. The tutorial was really poorly done. It was hard to tell what was going on screen. Like my building would be happy, but I didn't know why it was unhappy. It was really tough to figure out. And even worse, I could have dealt with all of that stuff. But the worst offender was in this game, which is ostensibly a turn-by-turn puzzle game, they added in a real-time element. So if you make a mistake, let's say that you put people next to a pollution plant or something, and you don't realize it, there's a clock that counts down right away, and you can't just move things back. Like it's a little too much to get into now, but when you make a move, you kind of commit to it, and it costs you resources, it costs you time, and then all of a sudden a real-time clock pops up, and it starts ticking away, and you lose resources, and you lose. You're getting penalized in real time, whereas everything up until this point has been turn-based and thoughtful and slow. That real-time clock killed it for me, and I just could not deal. So very disappointed because I love the aesthetics, love the concept, love the idea, and I've been waiting for it. I remembered it all this time, and when it finally got here, it was just a big bust.
Right, that's a shame. Yeah, it sounds like a good concept.
Yeah, it's a real shame. I hate to see games where you look at it and you feel like I mean, I'm not a game developer. I can't tell people what to do. I'm not saying I could do a better job myself, but as a fan, as somebody who plays a lot of games, you see something, you just sometimes you get that feeling of like, oh, this has got to be good. I can imagine so many ways it would go that I'm really looking forward to. I'm really excited, and to find out that like the developers have gone in like a direction you totally didn't expect, is just it's tough sometimes.
Yeah, especially taking a really crisp, clear concept that seems really exciting and just going too far into it or losing sight of that initial vision. It's a shame when the beginning point is good enough to have caught your attention in the first place and the layers that have been added on have detracted rather than added to the game.
Exactly so. Getting a hook, a real good hook, is really tough, and then to waste a good hook is just, I don't know, just a shame. Makes me want to cry a little bit.
Yeah, well, I've got one more here in this category, not to moan forever. As I said, I do tend to like to keep it positive, but I don't know. This one won't come as a surprise to you either, I think. I think we've maybe talked about this one before, but for me it was Returnal.
Ooh.
And this is a controversial pick. It was a game of the year for a lot of people out there, I know. I'm a Housemarque fan. I loved Nex Machina and their previous work, and Super Stardust Ultra I played in VR and I loved it. I was very excited to see them get a big budget and go into that third-person blockbuster area of game making. It was new for them, and I thought, if anyone can do it, Housemarque can do it. I was really into the atmosphere, really into the story. Picked it up, and I pretty much hated this game. And that's strong words, and it's not something that I will say often. And I think that this won't be a popular opinion with a lot of gamers, but this game was just too hard for me, to be honest. It's a very punishing game. It's a roguelike, but where roguelikes succeed in making short, snappy loops where you can just try, fail, and try again in a way that I really enjoyed in games like Hades and Moonlighter and other roguelikes, and even Going Under. Just there are games that do it in a way that's engaging. Returnal's runs are endless. They can go on for hours. And you lose everything. There is no carryover, really. Very, very few carryovers into the next run. And so you end up doing these mammoth runs and then having to start from scratch again. I got onto the second world, so I did actually defeat the first boss after, I think, 8 hours of play or something, and then realized that I was going to have to keep going through that first world. It's not even like you can skip straight ahead and start on world 2. And it just kind of took my will to live away from me. The thought of persisting with Returnal, it just took the wind out of my sails. And I was really sad about it because I was into the story. I was into the look of it. The sound design is amazing. The music is good. It's got this intriguing, twisted sci-fi story, time loop, lots of things to love, lots of things to like about it. The pedigree of coming from Housemarque. But I felt like they just got the formula a little twisted here on what makes roguelikes good and how to get the best out of Returnal with all of the positive, good things they'd made. It felt like they'd tripped at the finish line on this game. So this was the second one that I've got.
I'm very glad that you brought that up. I was considering adding it to my list at some point, and I decided not to. But I'm glad that you did, because I played Returnal. I actually finished Returnal, and that was I misspoke myself. Cuphead was not my last hate play. Returnal was my last hate play.
Right.
I was so everything you said is correct, right? And I have liked Housemarque's previous games, and I feel like they did lose the tune on this one, and I feel like they kind of got sucked into like the curse of Dark Souls, right? Like I like Dark Souls games. I love FromSoft. I'm a FromSoft fan since before FromSoft was even FromSoft, right? When they were like ASCII-ware back in the day. So I'm very familiar with them. But I feel like they have become victim of their own success, and I feel like their success has kind of corrupted the rest of the industry, where people are taking the wrong lessons from Dark Souls, and even Dark Souls is taking the wrong lessons from Dark Souls these days. I'm hoping they course correct, but that whole feeling of like being aggressively brutal to the player, or like, being so rough and get good, and that whole thing, I feel like is just really terrible, and I hate that we've gone down that path. And on top of that, I feel like people in the review sphere are definitely allergic to saying that something is too hard for them, because then it feels like their readership turns on them, because if all of a sudden you're not good enough, you can't get it done, you don't have the skills. It's a very tough place to be as a critic, and I say that myself as someone who has played all the Souls games, has played Cuphead, I've played, finished Darkest Dungeon, like I play and finish hard things, but at the same time, I am not afraid of saying when things are too hard, and I feel like Returnal was way too hard. I did not appreciate the difficulty curve. I feel like I play a lot of roguelikes. I play all the roguelikes, as anyone who listens to my show knows. And it's like they did not take the right lessons from the roguelike genre. They did not take the right lessons from the Souls genre. And it's like they had the core of something great. I mean, the graphics are amazing in that game. I feel like the controls are super snappy. It feels good. Yep. I feel like the concept works. I mean, a 3D roguelike, many people have done that successfully. Yep. I mean, there's a lot of things in its favor. But just like you said, like it is really brutal. It's really soul crushing to have a good run. And especially to have a good run when you've already gone through the same levels so many times. Like I think there's 6 areas total in Returnal. And so you're going to be seeing a lot of the same things over and over and over. And it's just, I feel like they missed the mark. Every time they had to have a good game making decision, they made the wrong choice, but they kept going forward. And I mean, if they wanted to make that kind of experience, more power to them. I mean, they're developers, they can do what they want. But like as someone who plays all these games and has played a lot of games and I have, I feel like I have a pretty well-informed opinion. I feel like they made some really crucial wrong decisions. And it was hard because a lot of people are now embracing this game. And when you talk about Returnal in this sense, like we are now, I mean, we're putting big targets on our backs, right? I'm assuming we're going to get some hate for this, but I mean, I gotta be with you, man. I agree 100%. I feel like they made some seriously wrong choices. And instead of fixing it, they kind of just played it off like, well, this is the game we wanted to make and shrug and move on,
Right, and that's something that I wasn't particularly fond of as well. I mean, I've played games in the past and struggled to get to the finish line. Like, for example, Control. I found Control quite difficult. I know some people just sailed through it, but I struggled through it. I really liked the game, liked the story. There was enough in it to keep me going. But later on, Remedy listened to the criticism, and people were saying that they just couldn't get through this game. And so they put in difficulty options that were classed as accessibility options, and they were sliders like we see so often now in games like Last of Us 2 and other games that do a good job of this, Guardians of the Galaxy recently.
Yes.
And you could just turn down the amount of damage you're taking, turn up the amount of damage you're doing, and adjust the formula at the heart of the game to suit you as a player. And I really respected Remedy for doing that, that they inserted those options to let people see their story. And Housemarque went the opposite route. They just said, this is how it is. And I was kind of surprised to hear that from them, because in past games like Nex Machina and Resogun, they are very generous with difficulty options. They have the classic arcade, easy, medium, hard. And you can tune the game, and it lets you do boss rush modes, it lets you do different kinds of play modes that suit you, and they were very generous. So it's an unexpected swerve from Housemarque to take the position they did on Returnal, even, I think.
Yeah, I have to say, I really don't respond well to hearing a developer say, well, this is the way it is, like it or don't. And especially when people say, well, not every game is right for every person. It boils my blood. It boils my blood so much because, I mean, this doesn't even have to be about accessibility, although we could talk about that if we wanted to, but it's just about respecting the player, respecting that people come in different stripes, respecting that people have different needs, and respecting them as customers too. Like, we don't often talk about games in this sphere as products, but I think we kind of have to because, I bought this game for full price. It was one of the very rare games that I bought for full price because I wanted to be in on the zeitgeist and I wanted to be in on the chat. And,
me too.
I luckily I had the patience and the time and the skill to get through it, but many people I talked to bounced off this game in the first world, and I don't blame them at all. But like, as someone who had paid $65 or $70 with tax or whatever it ended up being, if to hear a developer say, well, too bad for you, and there's no way for me to get my money back if this product is not right for me, that's just being really shitty to your customers. And I really don't appreciate that at all. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having accessibility options, with difficulty options, and taking that cold shoulder to me is very arrogant and very self-serving. And I feel like they really need to reevaluate that. I mean, they did cave on the no saving during a run, which was an abysmal choice. I mean, I was going to say it, a colossally stupid choice.
Yeah, they're not 20-minute runs. These are multiple hour runs.
Yeah, there was no...
You need to go to answer the door. You need to take a call. You need to make a meal.
Exactly.
Then the game's going to update anyway because it was constantly being updated with patches. Shut down, lose your run.
Yeah, there was no sense whatsoever in them making that call. I know they were kind of hard about it at first. Eventually, they wore down and they conceded that one point, which was ludicrous to begin with. But they've stayed firm on the rest, and so I mean, so be it. But I got to admit, I have lost some respect for them after that.
Yeah, it was a strange one. There is a good podcast out there. I think it's the AIA Game Makers podcast or something, when the director of the game addresses some of this in an interview. It's quite interesting. I'll put a link to it in the show notes in case anyone wants to hear from the horse's mouth what was behind those decisions.
That would be interesting. Would it make me mad, do you think?
I think so. I don't think he's. I don't think he's giving the answers we want to hear.
All right, maybe I won't listen to it then. I got to watch my blood pressure these days.
But to get back on track with something a bit more positive, the next category we've got here, I think I might have gotten these out of order a little bit from what I sent you, so I'm sorry if that's the case.
No worries, no worries.
But the next one that I've got here is the Getting It Done category, and this is for games that, you know, in the games of the year, we kind of get very caught up in the very cream of the crop. And as we have today, the things that didn't get where we wanted them to go. But sometimes there were some games that I had this year that were on my best of lists for a while, but then they kind of got bumped out or bumped down or just fell aside. And when I look back on the year, there were some pretty good games, pretty good solid games that just did a good job of what they were trying to do and that I had a really good time with. And while there might not be the diamonds of 2021, they're still pretty good games. And so I thought it might be nice to just give a little shout out to some games that we enjoyed that don't quite scrape into the games of the year, but there were solid plays, something that we wanted to shout out. So what have you got for this one?
Well, you know, I'm gonna subvert this a little bit. I'm gonna say that this was a really good game that just did not make the cut. It is, you know, it's probably gonna be in my top 10. I feel like I need to get the word out on this one because nobody played this one. It's called Kosmokrats with K. Have you seen this one?
I have not.
Oh man, what a gem this was. You know, it's not going to be my game of the year, not at all. But man, it was so worthwhile and so good. I played on the Switch. It's a 2D kind of a physics game where you play a Soviet. I don't know if it's actually Soviet, but it's definitely inspired and supposed to be Soviets. It may be kind of a fake Soviet thing, but anyway, you launch into space, a space race with the Americans, who may not be Americans, but the Soviets are red and the Americans are blue, and you know they don't have the exact same names, but you know who we're talking about. It's perfectly obvious. And while you're in space, you have to assemble these like space stations. Like the engineer dies, and it's got a very like Eastern European sort of a dark, dour sort of sense of humor where people die and it's funny and bad things happen and that's just how life is. And, you know, common themes for games from that part of the world. But you have to assemble space stations in space with physics. And so you've got a little drone and each level is you saying, oh, I need to put together a potato hydroponics thing in space, or I need to put together solar panels. And so they give you the pieces of the ship and they're shaped like kind of like Tetris pieces almost. Mm-hmm. And one end will be blue and one end will be red and one end will be green. And you got to figure out which piece goes where. And you've got a time limit and you pilot your drone around in 2D space and kind of push these pieces around and kind of get them to match up. And that part in itself is really interesting and fun. I think the physics of that are really cool. And the puzzle aspect is really fun as well. I don't think I've ever played anything quite like that. But it's also supported by the fact that the story was really good. There's branching paths in the story. People can live, people can die. And I think the developer who I was tweeting with for a while said there was something like 16 different endings, which blew me away for this small game out of nowhere to have so many different branching paths on it. I just really got the characters right. It got the humor right. It got the gameplay right. I mean, it's not going to be anybody's game of the year because it's kind of a small indie experience. And it's kind of, you know, it's weird. It's an acquired taste. Physics, space station, Russian humor. I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea, right? But when I got into this, I was blown away. Every aspect of it was really done well. And I feel like it definitely needs to be called out. So not a game of the year contender for me, but absolutely hit the spot for me and something I think a lot of people would enjoy.
Sounds interesting for sure. So you're piloting a drone moving Tetris-like pieces through space to assemble a space station. And then there's like a story element that is aside from that puzzly physics moment.
Exactly. Choices, people can live, people can die. It's very, I mean, I was involved. I was so involved when I made one wrong choice. I went back like 3 levels so I could just go back and make a different choice because I'm like, I was all in on this game. I really had feelings for it.
That sounds really interesting. I'm going to check that one out. I do like games that have an odd mechanic and then that have sort of slabs of story that come alongside it. It makes me think of the structure of Pyre a little bit, where you're doing a lot of texty stuff and reading and kind of making choices, and then you have this odd wizard ball moments. It sounds a little bit like that, like a mashup of an unusual game mechanic with a strong story, a choice-based story.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If you don't mind like having 2 great tastes that taste great together, that's exactly what this is.
Sounds good. So it's Kosmokrats with a K.
Exactly so.
Interesting one. I've picked for this one a little game called Lake.
Ooh.
And this is third-person postman simulator where you come back to your hometown. It's like a story game that has a driving and delivery mechanic in it. You drive a van around a beautiful lake. You can see the van as you're driving around. You see the trees, you see the weather. You have a little delivery map. You take your letters to where they're supposed to go. You occasionally have a conversation with someone who answers the door to collect a parcel, or someone that you meet along the way. It's separated out into days. It's a very beautiful looking game. I think it's a little in the style of a game like Firewatch in its depiction of nature. It's quite simple but quite striking. It's got a great script where you'll meet like an old cat lady who's got a sick cat and you have to take it to the vet, and the vet's got a story. There's a video store. It's set in the 80s, and this video store is struggling because there aren't enough people in town. Lots of little sub-stories, little slice of life moments. I found the writing to be quite rich. There are consequential decisions that you can make in the game to decide where your character is going to end up in life. And I played this one, I think it's set across 2 weeks, and you play it by days, and each day will take you no more than 15 minutes to half an hour. And so I literally played 1 day per day across the course of a couple of weeks. And I was really looking forward to it. At the end of my work day, I would turn on the Xbox, play a bit of Lake, just enjoy the calmness of it, listen to the radio as I was doing my deliveries, just really tune out of the day and de-stress. And by the end of it, I felt like I'd watched like a really good Netflix show across the course of the game. It was just very interesting, very understated, really nicely put together. It did have a couple performance issues when it launched, but they've patched it subsequently, and I hear that it's running quite well now. So I think it's one to play on a PC or a next generation Xbox. But Lake was a good, solid game for me. It didn't quite have that that special something that puts it on the Game of the Year list in the same way that Firewatch may have had. Maybe Firewatch was fresh when it came out, and there weren't that many games like that at the time. We've maybe seen this formula a little more now, but Lake had a little something going on. It was a real pleasure.
Oh man, I'm glad to hear you say that. This is one that's been on my list, and I feel like this is my jam. I feel like I would really get into this one, but I did hear about those performance issues, and I'm like, I am not allergic to putting something on hold in order to have the best possible experience. For example, when Fallout New Vegas came out, that's one of my favorite games of all time. Mm-hmm. It was smoking wreck on the 360, like it was in terrible shape. I waited a full year to let that thing get patched and to be fixed before I came to it. And I'm really glad that I did, because I had a wonderful time with it. So I think with Lake, I was waiting for it to get patched. I'm sure it must have been very high on the list. And here you say now that it's running better. Well, I'm going to have to go upstairs and play Lake this afternoon, because I've been waiting for it to be in good shape.
Right. I mean, it was even getting patches as I was playing it. I actually started playing it on the Xbox One, and that was a problem. But I picked up a Series S, and I finished it off on the Series S, and it was much better. And I did dip into it again a month later or so, and it was running much more smoothly. There's still a little bit of jittering and pop-in and stuff, but it's no longer as distracting as it was at first. Because in this kind of game where you're going into a calm experience, it's not overstimulating in any way, it's understated, so you're really spending a lot of time looking at nature. And so the things that you are looking at in the game have to be right, And if there's loads of pop-in, if there's loads of glitching, that's going to overtake the experience, because that's the main focus of the game. So they really had to get it right. And I'd be curious to hear how it runs for you if you do play it. But for me, they got there, and there was just a calm quality to the game. I really like a game that does something like this, that doesn't have combat, that doesn't have hit points, doesn't have skill trees, that just does something else, does a story experience, sensitively written. The conversation mechanics feel like real conversations. Like the choices that you have are sometimes so incrementally different, it's almost like a tone choice. So it actually does feel like a conversation simulator. This was a good, solid game. I mean, as I'm talking about it now, I'm talking it up and thinking, like, why didn't this make it onto my list? But
why didn't it, John?
I think it's in the right place. I think a good, solid game that got the job done. I think it's in its right spot.
Fair enough. I can't wait to crack into this one. I'm very glad to hear it's in better shape.
Okay, and we've got a category that you asked to be added in. This is games that we wished we'd played in 2021. What was on your mind with this one?
This is so Yes. I'm the editor of GameCritics.com, so I spend a lot of time at the website editing pieces, doing PR, doing website stuff, and we do the So Videogames podcast. And so, I mean, I don't know if you feel this way or not, but I feel like it's really possible to get into a cycle. You're stuck in the content cycle, right? Where you've got X amount of time before you need to start playing something fresh for the show, or you need to have something fresh for the website. And whenever you hit a game that just takes a lot of time, you can cover it once. You can maybe get away with covering it twice, but after that, you got to stop talking about it because people don't want to hear about it anymore. And that kind of limits what you can play, or at least for me anyway. I feel like sometimes I can only play a really long game if I'm playing a bunch of little short games at the same time. So I've got something to talk about, but I'm kind of working on that long game. And something that I really wanted to dig into and I just could not make the time for was Disco Elysium. Have you played this one?
Yes, I have. Wow, that is one that should be in this spot on the list for sure.
Oh, I loved everything about it. I got a copy of it when it hit PS5. Love the art style. Love the writing. I love everything that's doing. It seems like so interesting. I mean, it was just thumbs up all the way through. The simple fact of it was like it just is a slow game. The first time I played it, I wanted to read all the dialogue. There's like this immense amount of dialogue, and it's all very good. It's all world building and tells you a lot about the characters. But like, I would sit down for like an hour and a half, and I would feel like I had a good time, but I would feel like I didn't do anything. Like I didn't make any progress. And I played a couple sessions like that where I'm like, uh-oh, this is a problem. Like it's a very enjoyable pit of quicksand, but I can't afford to get caught in this one because I'm going to end up talking about this on the podcast for the next 17 episodes, and that's not going to fly. So I put it on hold because I just didn't have the free time for it. But I loved everything about it. I love the concept. I love like the writing. The voices I think are great. I mean, everything about it is great. I just didn't have the raw time. So that is something I 1,000% want to make time for. And maybe once things wrap up for the year and we have the post New Year lull, maybe I'll crack into it then.
Right. So what system were you playing Disco Elysium on? Was it the Final Cut version?
It was the Final Cut on PS5. Yes.
Right. So it's the Rolls-Royce version then.
Oh yes, it's really nice. I mean, the voice work I think is great, and just all the bells and whistles and stuff. And it ran fine. I mean, I know some people felt like it was a little bit wonky with the controller, but I thought it was fine. I mean, I didn't have anything to compare it to, so I was having no problem at all. I have no complaints about it whatsoever, except for the fact that it just takes a lot of time to play that game.
Yeah, it does. It does. I played through this one before the Final Cut on a MacBook that could barely run it, and so my MacBook was, extremely hot and making a lot of noise. But I got through this game, and I think I binged this one actually. It was in the post-Christmas lull. It was the first game that I'd played that year, I think, and I'm here to say that it's worth getting to the end of this one. I think, for me at least, I loved where the plot went with Disco Elysium. I love what they did with the story on that game. It's such an unusual game. I haven't played anything quite like it in tone and content and writing, but I agree that it is very, very slow. There are walls of text to get through. There are large parts of the game where you're just waiting for things to happen and just sort of milling around in this odd world. So it's not very propulsive and it's not very driven in some sections. I think there's like halfway through the game it opens up a little, like you get access to more of the map. But yeah, what a game! It's a real one-off.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to it. It's one of those things you got to just soak in. You can't rush it, and I felt like if I rushed through it, I'd be doing it a disservice, and also doing myself a disservice. Something like this doesn't come along every day, so it's a hard choice, but I had to put it aside. But we'll get to it. So, what about your pick for this category, John?
I've got a couple. I've got a little list here. I'm much like you. I'm doing a podcast every week, and I'm focusing on one game at a time, one review a week usually. And the list builds up, my eyes are bigger than my belly when it comes to gaming. I will ask for codes on games that seem interesting. I'll buy things that are on half-price sale. And I've got a list of probably 40 games that I have on one system or another this year, and I haven't even opened. So I've got a big old list, and I kind of like it that way, because I like to pick a game that's going to suit my mood. I like to pick a game that I'm in the right place to enjoy properly and to speak on engagingly. And so some games just fall to the side. And one of those this year, there's a couple I've got here. Two of them are quite short indie experiences, so there is every chance that I could get to these. One of them is a Devolver game, and I will usually play anything that Devolver puts out. It's Essays on Empathy.
That's the name of it?
Yeah.
No, I had no idea what you were talking about there. From like that's
Essays
the title.
on Empathy. Yeah,
I have literally no. I don't think I've even heard of it.
It's Windows only. It's a series of short story-led vignettes. I was taken by the title. I was interested enough to get it, interested enough to download it onto Steam, and I just have not yet had quite the mood for it. But it's one that I really want to get to. Another one is Before Your Eyes.
Oh, I've heard this was wonderful, yes.
Right, and this was the one where you have to use a cam and you have to blink to move the story forward, right? And you can keep your eyes open, but when you blink, the scene will change. And so the scene doesn't end. It's like you're watching a scene of someone speaking to you. You're trying to keep your eyes open, see what they're going to say. Eventually, you have to blink. So you're ending the scene almost involuntarily. From what I hear, this is a really interesting mechanic, and it's one that I've been fascinated by, but I think I just maybe I didn't have a proper cam at the time, or I'd heard that it wasn't working well on laptops or something like that, but I haven't got to it yet. But it feels like this is the kind of game that should be on Gaming in the Wild, if you know what I mean. So I feel like I have to get my act together with this one.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about this one, and in fact, the critic who reviewed it for me at Game Critics, he loved it so much, he bought me a copy of it and said, Brad, you have to play this. And he's like, I know you don't play on PC, but you simply must play this. And I have it, and I have a cam. But again, I'm going to add it to the long list of games that I really want to get to, and I haven't got to. But I've heard nothing but raves for that one.
Mm-hmm. I have got one more here, and it is a massive one. It's games that I've never played before and should have. It's Mass Effect Trilogy.
What?
I've never played them.
Oh my gosh.
The Mass Effect games came out when I was not playing games, and so I missed the whole thing. And you were talking about Diablo 2.
Yes.
I'm a little concerned about Mass Effect Trilogy because I know that a lot of people have a real place in their heart for these games, but I'm also very aware that people do have rose-tinted glasses when they look back at games that they played back in the day. And if you've got an opinion on this one, I'd be curious to hear what you think. Does Mass Effect stand up, and are the remasters the way to play them?
So I'm glad you asked this because I love Mass Effect. It's probably one of my favorite series of all time. It's really up there for me. But my wife had never played it. So we bought the remastered version, and I sat down next to her and rubbed my hands with glee, and I just sat quietly and just watched her play through. It absolutely holds up. I mean, she played the remastered version. She went through number 1, which I think is the biggest hurdle for people. I don't have a problem with Mass Effect 1 at all. But some people, objected to the menus, the inventory system, the elevator was a problem. And there you have a vehicle called the Mako, which is kind of famously kind of wonky. They fixed it in this one. But, I mean, I think this series absolutely holds up. I think that the overriding value is in the story and the characters, and those come through, regardless of the little bumps and bruises in the gameplay or the inefficiencies or whatever. If you connect with the story and the characters, you're going to want to finish this thing all the way through and just go through it. I think it's definitely worth playing. I don't think it's overhyped. I don't think it's something that, I mean, unless you're like a bleeding edge graphics person where like you have to have 4K and 120 frames for everything. I mean, if you're not that kind of person, and you don't at all strike me as that person, John, I think that you will be able to find the goodness in this if you connect with the sci-fi, if you connect with Commander Shepard. I mean, so much good storytelling. I just have so many fond memories of it. And watching my wife go through it, she enjoyed it just as much as I hoped she would. So I think it's still good to go. Okay,
I'm happy to hear that. I know that probably some listeners of the podcast have got their head in their hands to hear me say that I haven't played these games. But I have to say, I think I'm a little intimidated by the scale of them as well. Like we've been saying, you have to be playing new things if you're gonna make a show every week and have things to talk about. I mean, I think it's the reason that I haven't finished Red Dead Redemption 2. It's the reason that it took me a couple of bites of the cherry to get through Death Stranding. Sometimes those big games, you play enough to talk about them and then you have to move on, and you naturally end up playing something new for the show and they just slip away somehow. So I'm wondering, I'm hoping that I can get a time to play Mass Effect properly and give it the attention that it sounds like it deserves.
It's really worth doing, and I feel like it's one of those touchstones where like anyone in our position where we speak about games in a somewhat authoritatively, or we have strong opinions. It's something that I think you have to at least try. You don't have to do the whole thing in one whack. I mean, I think you could probably get through the first Mass Effect, 20 hours if you're not being super completionist. I mean, I'm totally completionist, but you could get through it in 15, 20 hours and just see the story, hit all the big beats, maybe take a break. Hit the next one, another 15, 20 hours. So like altogether, I mean, I think you're probably talking about, maybe 60, 80-hour commitment over 3 games, but that's also dependent on how quickly you want to play and if you're just in for the story or if you want to max everything out. So,
Okay, it's on my list. It's on my wish list. It's going up to the top of my wish list. I think it's time. It's time to do this. It's something that's missing from my gaming knowledge and my gaming life.
You got to check that box, John. You got to do it.
Got to do it. Okay, so we've got one more category on gaming just at the end here. We've got news, publisher, and like a little chat about goatees at the end there. But we've already talked a little bit about games that came out of nowhere and stuff, but what was a game that you think has gone under the radar this year that just did not make the mainstream?
Oh man,
it
so many.
It sounds like half the games that you've played this year, but really one that you the way that your friend bought before your eyes for you. What's the game that you would buy and put in someone's hand and say, please take this and play it?
Oh my gosh, this is such a difficult category. I'm gonna have to cheat. I'm gonna have to do 2. I can't do 1. There's just too many.
No problem. Do it.
The first one I'm gonna say is Death Crown. You've heard of Death Crown?
I've heard of it. I haven't played it.
Oh man, what a strange, bizarre thing. I got some PR about this, and I gotta be honest with you. I looked at the screenshots. I watched the trailer. I couldn't even tell what was going on. I had no idea what kind of game it was. My brain could not process what I was seeing. But it was black and white. It had a lot of like heavy metal imagery, like skulls and blood and death. And I'm like, okay, well, this has got a style. And I'm curious to see what this even plays like. I just can't even understand it. What it is like it's a super streamed down RTS, like lightning fast, no fat whatsoever. It's just brass tacks. You've got 3 types of units. That's all you got. Put them out there in the map really quickly, and you're up against an enemy on every map. I think there's, each campaign has maybe like 20 battles, and you just get in there and you just put your stuff down and just play as fast as you can. And I'm not a big RTS fan at all. It's not a genre that I thrive in whatsoever. But this one is different because, number one, it's so simple. You've only got like 3 units to deal with, so it's very manageable. And also, each map is one screen. My problem with RTS is usually there's too many things going on and I can't keep track. If I'm on the west side of the map, someone's getting killed on the east. And when I go to save one on the east, someone's getting killed on the north. And I just have a real tough time juggling so many things at once, right? But with everything on one screen, you have total knowledge, awareness of everything that's happening. And so it makes it manageable to keep playing at that pace. I loved how quickly and how easily and how streamlined it was. Also, I love the style. It's extremely enigmatic. Like, they don't explain the story very much, but there's just enough to kind of chew on. And the graphics are just really something else. Like, it doesn't look like anything else I've played this year. It's really, like, out there in so many ways. So, Death Crown is one that I had a really great time with. It's very rare that I ever replay a game, but Death Crown is one that I played and finished. I immediately started again, played and finished, and then I immediately played and started again.
Wow,
like,
that's
3 times.
That's a good one.
It's bonkers. I never do that, and I did it with this, and it also helps you can play through it in like an hour, so it's not a huge.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm remembering I heard this one. It was reviewed on the Short Game podcast. I don't know if you ever listened to those guys.
I do sometimes, yes.
Yeah, they did an episode on that one, and it did sound interesting. I'm looking at a screenshot of it. It looks like line drawn Advance Wars.
Kind of, yeah. It's like it's black and white and lines, and it's like really sketchy, but it's got this kind of weird energy to it, and it feels very like necrotic and poisonous in some ways. It's very good and different and weird. I really love it.
Sounds great.
So that is Death Crown. The other one I want to give a shout out is to The Procession to Cavalry. Have you played this one?
I have not. I've got it downloaded on my Xbox. I was curious about it. It's a Game Pass game, right?
Yeah, it is a Game Pass game, which I am so thrilled about. I am so thrilled that the people have a chance to play this. I love this game so much. It's a point-and-click adventure, but the hook to this game is that everything, all the graphics and all the characters and everything, all your menu items, they're all cut from Renaissance art. So like actual paintings. The I think it's Joe Richardson, I believe the developer's name is. He took all these like really, really famous paintings, and he cut out like all the characters, and he made them animated, and all the backgrounds, all the buildings, everything is something from a Renaissance painting. So it's this giant like patchwork collage of images, and the sizes are not the right, because the scale is different in different paintings. Sometimes the backgrounds don't quite match up, but it looks so amazing. Like, it's so strange and fresh and new, and seeing the animation, it all kind of comes off like a Monty Python, the little interstitials between Monty Python skits.
Right.
Where they
Terry
have
Gilliam,
like, exactly, like a Terry Gilliam, sort of a weird off-kilter, herky-jerky sort of animation thing. The entire game looks like that, and it's amazing. And the thing that's extra amazing is it's so funny. Joe Richardson's sense of humor, it jibes with me so hard. Like, so many things about this game are just like, laugh out loud. I don't think he's going to say that. Oh my God, he just said that. I can't believe he said that. I'm laughing, crying. Like, it was just really, really, really clever. And I want to give just a special shout out, because this is a point and click. There's very little moon logic in it. He falls down a little bit towards the end, but 3/4 of the game is just very straightforward, very funny and accessible. And I even tweeted him and I said, "Hey man, lay off the moon logic next time." So we'll see what he says about that. Right. But the thing that I really respect so hard about this game is that if you don't want to do the moon logic, you can just kill everybody in your path. So if you're like, I don't want to find your item, I don't want to solve your puzzle, I don't want to do anything about this, you just whack their head off and you just keep moving on. You can finish the whole game in like 6 minutes if you want to. And it's so funny. I love that he gave you that option. It's not the true ending, of course, but the fact that you can even do it, because it's what you're always thinking. Every point and click player at some point is like, oh, Mr. Guy, I don't want to find the cat hair for your mustache. I just want to walk right past you, If you've ever felt like that, this is the fulfillment of that fantasy where you don't want to do the puzzle. You just want to go, and he lets you do it, and it's brilliant. I totally forgive him for the moon logic because he did that. It's such a great game, and nobody played it. Nobody talked about it, and it's on Game Pass. I mean, oh my goodness, please, give it a shot.
Right, this was one that crossed the path, and it was interesting enough to download it, but I never quite hit go on it. But that's one way to find an art style, man. If you're worrying about where to find your assets, just go back to the old masters. Gosh.
That's right. Those Renaissance dudes did all the work for you. Just cut and paste, bro.
It's a really funny choice, especially to take that kind of subject material and put it in like an irreverent game like the one you're describing. And I think everyone probably does this, but when you start a game and the first thing that you do, you see a path of dotted lights that you're supposed to walk towards, you just turn around and you walk up to the wall and you hit it with whatever you have just to see what happens and test the limits of the game, It's something that I do in every single game. It's like you can see the route ahead, but you just try everything else first, at least at the start of the game, to get a feel for what is and isn't allowed. So I love it when game makers allow you to do strange stuff, like in Nier Automata, when you can just take out your memory chip and die. These things that don't have to be there but are, and give you that extra feeling of choice and agency.
I love it. I love that stuff.
Like the sound of that one.
It's so good. You got to get to. I cannot imagine you wouldn't love this one. It's so funny. It's a real treat.
Okay. Yeah, I've even got it on. I know that I've got it on my Xbox, so maybe that's one for over the Christmas holidays as well. So we just got a couple left here. On looking at Games of the Year list, obviously it's a lot about ranking and rating, but I've enjoyed that in this format we've just been looking at the year that was kind of thing. And so one of the categories that I've got here is what was in the news. What was a piece of gaming news that came out this year that made you happy, and one not so much.
Oh, man. So I'm going to go with the good first. I think, potentially good anyway. It's very recent news, but that Sony was going to be launching their own equivalent to Game Pass. I love Game Pass. I think it's great. I congratulate Microsoft for getting this formula's concept right. I know a lot of people have tried it before Game Pass and it just wasn't successful. It never took off. Many people took a stab at it and it didn't work. I feel like Microsoft has finally found the formula, and I feel like Game Pass is wonderful. Not just for cost savings, although the cost savings are immense because there's no way you'd be able to buy all those games and play them, especially when you don't like them. I mean, it'd be a horrific waste of money. But, for example, my son, who is 12, he doesn't quite know exactly all the kind of games that he likes. And so he'll dip into Game Pass and he'll be like, he'll just try this and try this and try this and try this. And it's stuff that I wouldn't have bought for him. He wouldn't have bought for himself. I mean, he's got an allowance. He needs to save his money. So he's going to be very choosy. But with Game Pass, he can try all these things. And because of that, he has discovered, I actually like sim games like SimCity. I didn't know I liked these, but I really love these. And I didn't know that I like physics games, but I like stuff like Astroneer. I never would have bought that, but I like it, and I got to find that out about myself because of the flexibility of Game Pass. So I think that's amazing. I think that's a really great beneficial side effect, in addition to just letting people see that there's more out there than the AAAs. Because when you've only got $60 and you got to make one purchase, of course you're going to buy the thing that you know is good. I mean, you wouldn't want to risk your one game for the month on something that was a maybe. But I think this is a great answer because it lets people try their things and opens the door. So I think Sony has really been behind the curve on this. I'm really glad to see that they are getting something off the ground. I don't know the details. I don't know that anybody knows the details, but I hope it will be as good, as well curated, and as generous as what Game Pass has been doing. My fingers are crossed. I feel like this is a great thing, and Sony definitely needs it.
Right. I'm interested to see what they do as well, because I think the thing that Game Pass did for me in cracking the code is this mixture of giving you day one Forza Horizon, Halo Infinite type games that everyone wants, but also as part of that service, it's like every month you're getting 10 indie games that maybe you hadn't even heard of. I'm getting served things like Unpacking, and like, what is it? The Calvary one that you just mentioned?
Procession to Cavalry is on there,
Procession to Calvary. Like games like that perhaps may have just sailed by, but they are taking these great indie titles and they're giving you such a well-curated bundle of games. And like you're saying, they let you try out lots of different things. I found some games that I definitely wouldn't have found by having Game Pass. So I'm wondering if Sony can, or if they want to, try and emulate that model and give people indie games constantly, because the services they have so far have been pretty much focused on fairly mainstream games, And what Game Pass does that is different is that they've sidestepped that and they've gone a different route.
I mean, that's really the key, right? And I love the curation. I feel like Microsoft has been doing a really good job, but it's like Netflix, right? Like Netflix realized that there's so many people out there, you got to give a little bit for everything. So you can go and find Indian romances, you can find horror of every stripe, you can find Hallmark movies, you can find comedies. Like, there's something for everybody, right? And I feel like Game Pass does a really good job of that. Like, and I agree with you 100% about the indies. I love seeing these small indies that I would never have expected to pop up. And I know for a fact most people would never have seen this game. They would never have tried these games. And here it is. And maybe they're not going to click, maybe they're not going to download, but at least they'll see it. Maybe they'll consider it. Maybe a friend will tell them about it. Maybe they'll hear it on your show, who knows? But at least it's there, right? They have the option. So I hope that Sony opens the door as wide as Microsoft has and doesn't just focus on their back catalog games or their second party games, not just like the big hits. I really want them to like open it up to everybody. That would be my goal.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope that's what they do with it. I fear that they are going to stick with that Sony games are best first party big hitters, but I would love to see them actually try and learn from Game Pass rather than just emulating it.
Agree.
So my good news of the year here is it's the fact that a feature that I really wanted on one of my consoles was absent, and I was thinking it's going to be next gen, it's going to be new hardware. It was when Nintendo, out of thin air, turned on the Bluetooth on the Switch.
Ah, okay.
And like, what? Bluetooth was there all along. The call was coming from in the house. Like, I've been carrying around because I use Bluetooth headphones to listen to music all the time, and I think I've told you before that audio is very important for me in my game experience. I love atmospheric music. I think it adds 30% onto the game. If the game has good music, it's really going to draw me in. It's really going to hold my attention, give me the atmosphere that I want. And Switch is a handheld. It's meant to be played in public. It's meant to be played on planes. It's meant to be played wherever. And so I've been carting around like a cumbersome cable that you have to like plug in, sticks out weirdly, and stick it into your headphones. You've got more things to charge, more things to worry about. And so the fact that all of a sudden you can just switch on the Bluetooth on your Switch and that you can just hear that music anywhere you are was just mind-blowing. I couldn't believe that it wasn't a Switch 2 feature and that it was there the whole time. Blew my mind. Nintendo, what are you doing?
A lot of people felt kind of betrayed when they revealed it was there the whole time. People were like, what the hell? Why didn't you do this sooner?
I hear that the Joy-Cons communicate by Bluetooth anyway.
Yeah.
And I hear that the Nintendo were worried about latency and quality and that the and the headphones got better or something. But I have a pair of low latency earbuds and they just work fine. There's no delay whatsoever. It's the feature that I wanted. It would be top of my wish list for the next Switch, along with a good screen. And so all of a sudden I got a Switch OLED. It's got my Bluetooth audio. It's got a nice bright screen for my old eyes. And I've got my dream Switch. So that was great news for me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Right on. Right on.
And I've got a feeling that we might settle on the same bad news in the gaming year. I mean, I've got here obviously like the talk of the industry, the kind of the abuse that has been going on in the games industry, the things that have been going on, the cover-ups that have been going on. This, for me at least, this was shocking. This was shocking that the people that are making the games that we love, that we're talking about right now, have been subject to such terrible conditions, and the way that the industry has responded to what's going on, and the kind of the discoveries that have been made, the brave people that have come forward and given their stories, has not been ideal. It's been slow. It's been cumbersome. You get the feeling that decision makers are perhaps not as on board with this whole revolution that needs to take place as they could be. You know, on the Game Awards last night, we had Jeff Keighley giving a statement that felt like he'd been forced to do it for positioning, and it was very equivocal. It was like, and all hate has to end, including online trolls. And kind of, you know, I heard today from someone that the head of Activision Blizzard is on the advisory panel for the Game Awards.
Sure.
Still in his role. So this has been a horrible saga that's been unfolding, and I won't block too much time out of the podcast talking about it because, you know, this is supposed to be a place where we're talking about games, but that was certainly something that was terrible in this year in gaming.
I mean, 100% agreed. I had a couple choices here, so you got that one. I'm glad you got that one covered. I was going to bring that up otherwise. But agree 100%, and I think it's really ironic and kind of, you know, I mean, hey, we're at the Game Awards, and we're going to wag our finger, but at the same time, here's all the games from those people who did all these offenses. Yay! I mean, I feel like that was a very difficult thing, a fine line to walk, and I don't know that they landed on the right side of it. And even, you know, before he gave that statement, his previous statement was something like, oh, we're not going to take sides on it, and he seemed to like not want to commit at all, which was even more cowardly. So anyway, that's not my official choice for the show, but I'm glad you brought that up. I will choose NFTs. Fuck NFTs. I hate NFTs. It is a cancer on humanity. It is a plague. It is disgusting stuff being shoved down our throats from tech bros in Silicon Valley. And seeing Ubisoft just recently announce that they're going to have NFTs. I mean, it's so many things wrong with it from like an ecological perspective. But simply talking about how they're going to be implemented in game, I don't want a game where I need to like earn a return on my investment. I don't want to work in a game. I don't want to build up money for someone else. I don't want to like own one thing that no one else has, because inevitably I will not be the person that owns that, and I will be mad that I don't have it. You know, like there shouldn't be an NFT of a gun that does, you know, 5 more damage than any other gun. There shouldn't be an NFT of a skin that's my favorite character that I can't have because I didn't pay whatever money. Like, I don't see any good application for an NFT whatsoever. It only screams scam and ripoff and exclusionary processes, and I don't see anything good about it, whatever. I don't want to hear the words blockchain. I don't want to hear the words NFT. Get this stuff out of my gaming. I see nothing but darkness and decay down that path, and I'm afraid we are hurtling down it.
Right. Couldn't agree more. Interestingly, the CEO of the company that I work at currently, his name is Robert Anderberg. He's on Twitter, and he read the terms and conditions of the Ubisoft Quartz announcement, which seems like it's something that not a lot of people had done. And he took out the greatest hits of bullshit from the terms and conditions, including that the system is acknowledged not to be secure, that if anyone loses their NFTs, loses their cryptocurrency, all of that sort of thing, that it's not Ubisoft's fault. Problems about reselling, caps on reselling things. So even if your NFT gets worth a lot of money after $10,000, you have to bargain with the company that supposedly sold you this thing, so it's not fully yours. And he just went through and plucked out all of this nonsense and lined it up on a Twitter thread. Went kind of viral, ended up being like quoted in a Kotaku piece that followed up on the Quartz announcement. So it seemed like the journalists were actually taking the lead from people on Twitter, but it just looks like a mess, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like it's the buzzword. Everybody smells money, but no one's really thinking it through. And
Hmm.
honestly, it's just a scam. It's like it is the most ridiculous kook brained scam I could ever imagine. And people are just going all in because they just smell the money, right? It's
Yep.
gonna pop. People are going to get hurt. People are going to get burned. Bad decisions are going to be made. This is just unequivocally stupid. And there's no two ways about it. I really hope that gaming doesn't go down this direction for a while because I only see negatives. I see nothing good coming from this.
Yeah, the same. I'm yet to see an argument or a feature that makes me think that anything about it is a good idea. Having crypto or NFTs in games, I'm yet to see an application or a description of an implementation that has even given me anything positive to latch onto. It literally just looks like a bunch of tech companies stampeding because they get a sniff of a new way to make money. I don't see any way that it makes games better.
Yeah, I fully agree. So that for me was the bad news of this year for sure.
All right, well, let's talk about the publisher of the year. How do you feel about game publishers? Do you have publishers that you feel loyal to or that you will follow along with, or are you kind of mix and match?
I mean, I have my favorites, and I
Yeah.
have some people who I absolutely try to stay away from. I mean, I love Capcom for all their failings. I really connect with a lot of their games. I love some of the stuff coming from Devolver and some of those indie publishers. There's some people that I absolutely will avoid. Just go out of
What's
my
the
way
one
to
that's
not.
your nemesis again that keeps reeling you in with ads that I
Oh
hear
my
about all the
god!
time on So Videogames?
I know. I'm trying to think of. I can see their picture in my head. It's
And it's
oh my
always a
god.
pixel art game.
Yes,
And
it's
it's
always a pixel art
always
game. It's always 2D. All their trailers are fire. They have the number one like trailer maker on the internet because
yeah.
all his trailers are like amazing.
Every time they
And,
come up on the show, I can't help but laugh that you've been reeled in once again.
oh my god, I
But
can't.
that's
I'm going to look it up. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I will get back to it because I have old man brain right now. But I don't really like. I don't follow them too closely. Like I don't really like root for any publisher, but I keep an eye on it. If I had to pick one who I felt like did great work this year, if we're talking about maybe publisher of the year, honestly, I feel like, and this is kind of surprising to me because I don't know that I would have said this a couple years ago. I have to pick Microsoft, and even though they are one of the biggest dogs out there, and I usually lean more towards the indie stuff, I feel like for two reasons. Number one, like we just talked about, I feel like Game Pass is just killing it right now. I feel like
mhm.
it's so win-win for everybody, and I hope that the people whose games are on there are getting enough money. I don't know what the compensation is. That's kind of a question mark, but I hope that they're getting paid enough. But in terms of broadening the audience for these games, visibility for these games, as a player getting access to all these games, the curation, the variety, I feel like it's great. It's what I always wanted it to be and what it hasn't been for so long. I feel like they're really, really getting it right. So that's great. But the other reason is because Microsoft is really leading the way in accessibility. I mean, that's something that I cared about at Game Critics for like the last 20 years. We spent so many years talking about making games accessible for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. We started adding colorblind information. We started adding control information for people who may have some motor issues. I mean, accessibility is near and dear to my heart. I mean, it's kind of a lifelong thing for me. And to finally see Microsoft coming around in so many ways, I mean, the controller, the specialty controller they released a while ago, they started adding sign language interpreters to a lot of their presentations. And full disclosure, I am one of those interpreters sometimes, so you may see me on TV with Microsoft. But like opening things up, I see all the work they're doing behind the scenes, right? I talk to the people on the accessibility teams. They're all wonderful. They all really believe in it. And they are working so hard to like open these games up to people because they want everybody to really get in and play these things and enjoy them. Like there's no gatekeeping. They want to remove as many barriers as possible. And I feel like this is really important work in terms of like on a societal level, right? Like it's not just about more game sales. It's not just about a popularity contest or a check mark on the back of the box. Like these people really do believe in this. And when you see someone who has not been able to play a game finally get to play a game, it makes you want to cry. Like it's so much joy that this thing that's been out of reach for them that they've seen from the outside and they can finally get in and play something. Like seeing person play Forza where they weren't able to play it before, or seeing somebody play Gears when they couldn't play it before, or whatever. Like seeing subtitles, asking you if you want subtitles before the movie starts, before the cutscene starts. It's huge. It's a huge thing for people that can't hear. And so to see Microsoft being so vocal about it and putting it so forward in so many of their presentations, for me is really heartening. It's really erased a lot of their past sins for me, and they have not been the greatest publisher. They've had a lot of problems in the past. I've not always been their biggest fan. But for this year, I feel like they are just firing on all cylinders and they're doing everything right now. So I'm really happy for them, and I really feel like what they're doing is good for everybody. So for me, my pick for Publisher of the Year is Microsoft.
That's a good one. That was one bright spot in the Game Awards last night, was the award for the accessibility, and it was the Forza team that won it. And the guy gave quite a nice speech. He said, when everyone plays, we all win. It was really nice to hear that said out loud. It feels for so long that accessibility has been considered such a minority topic that they've just ignored it, kind of. And it's so nice to see that being brought front and center in the conversation. It's really does feel like a breakthrough. It must be very satisfying for you, as someone that works in the field.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks because so many times people will conflate like accessibility with like ease or like lack of challenge or something. But that's not really what it's about. I mean, this is a much larger discussion. We have to get into this now, but there's this kind of impulse from gamers to like, this game is not for you. I shouldn't have to change anything. I don't want to have any settings because I want the challenge. I want to prove myself or whatever. And if you're one of those dick measuring guys, I mean, I feel sad for you, number one. But number two, you should be able to go do and measure your dick whatever you want. But like other people who don't want to do that should be able to play their way. And you shouldn't have to set the rules for everybody else, right? And adding difficulty to a game doesn't take away from the challenge that's already there. Adding accessibility things like colorblind features or a font that can be changed doesn't take away from the game. And these developers who are not sympathetic to it, who say, well, this is not my vision, I don't want to do that, or I can't make a game that fits everybody, so I'm not going to try, or these things are not important to me, or we don't have the budget, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you're really keeping people out, and it's just a shame because I think games are something that everybody can enjoy. Everybody loves games. Everybody who has a chance to play games ends up loving games. We don't like the same kinds of games. We don't even like the same things from games. For example, I mean, let's take Dark Souls, one of the worst offenders of Get Good out there. Those fans are notoriously hardcore about not wanting difficulty settings, not wanting any kind of settings, and really gatekeeping. But there's so much to like about a Dark Souls. There's like the story, there's the lore, there's the world design, there's the environmental mood, there's like the themes that come up, there's the actual stamina-based combat. There's so many aspects to a Dark Souls that's not just straight-up difficulty, that when you don't have any kind of those features, you're blocking out so many people who might have really enjoyed this thing and found something valuable about it that's maybe not the thing that you think is valuable, but it's valuable to them. So I think that a lot of these false equivalencies really keep people out, and I'm glad to see finally people starting to say, like Microsoft saying, like when we all play, we all win, or like I think it was Tim Schafer from Double Fine who said, we put in, what is it, like a God mode or something? It was like invincibility, and if you beat our game on invincibility, you still beat the game. Like, it's not taking away anything. Like, you still finish the game, right? That's amazing for someone of his stature to come out and say, yeah, it doesn't matter what you play on easy, medium, or hard, or invincible, or whatever. You're playing the game. Like, you're doing this thing that we wanted you to enjoy. You're engaging in this content that we created for you. Why would you not want to share that with as many people as possible? So I love that people are finally coming around to seeing that like accessibility is not the same thing as like destroying your game, destroying your vision, or destroying the challenge. It's letting more people in, and I can only see that as a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And that's great reasoning behind that one. There is an accessibility specialist that I follow on Twitter he spends a lot, I forget his name right now, but again, I will link it in the notes if anyone wants to follow him. But he's often to be found fighting these trolls and debunking stuff. It's got to be Ian
Hamilton, right? Ian Hamilton,
there we go.
Yeah, he's a rock star.
He's brilliant, and I follow him, and I love his posting. I think one of my favourite ones recently was some Dark Souls asshole had come on and said, there's only one way to the top of Mount Everest, and you can't skip it by getting there on a helicopter. And then he responded by posting 24 different routes to the top of Mount Everest with different color codes for different hiking abilities and climbing abilities. And was like, no, there isn't one way to the top. There's 25 ways to the top, and anyone, it's available to anyone who wants to try.
I mean, that's exactly so, right? Like, you get to the top, however you get to the top, and who cares how you got there? Like, it's not about proving yourself to anyone else. It's not about clearing some arbitrary bar. It's about enjoying this thing that you enjoy, doing it for yourself, like living life the way that you want to live it. And you shouldn't have to like put up with this nonsense from these other people that have their hangups or their insecurities. It's just, I love Ian Hamilton. He is the greatest, and he is like a tireless warrior. I wish I had the stamina that guy does, because he's fighting trolls left, right, and center 24/7, man. I don't know how that guy does it.
Such patience as well. Such patience and grace. He doesn't get mad. He doesn't punch back. He just states facts until they
He is
burn
king.
out.
If you don't follow Ian Hamilton, go follow Ian Hamilton for sure.
Okay. Well, my publisher of the year is a bit of a less noble one than you brought up there for the reasoning. But I mean, I've got a few publishers that I follow. They're indie publishers. But I mean, Annapurna is a big favorite of mine. But I looked at what they put out this year, and they had a bit of a losing streak, the first that they've had in their history, really, where they had Maquette and Last Stop and 12 Minutes. And I was like, wow, Annapurna had a mixed year. They brought it back at the end there with The Artful Escape and with Solar Ash, both of which are in my general end of year lists. So they did some good stuff, but it wasn't their year, and I think that almost defaults it to Devolver for me, and I know that that's not a very controversial pick, and no one's going to discover Devolver because of me saying that they're great. But when I look at what they put out this year, when they put out Inscryption, they put out Death's Door, they put out Olia, Loop Hero, Boomerang X, the My Friend Pedro game, like, I will play anything that Devolver puts out. I have not played a bad game on Devolver as yet. And when I look down the games that I've played and loved this year, they're just killing it. And their games are all finished. Their games are all interesting. You don't get a buggy, crashy Devolver game. They're just cooked to perfection. And I love what they're doing. Absolutely love them.
They are great stuff. Regardless of whether you like their selections or not, they're always worth a look. They always try to bring something that's a little bit different, that's got an edge to it. And, I like a lot of their games. I am a fan of a lot of their stuff. I don't like all of them, but even the stuff that I don't care for so much, I can see why they chose it. I can see why they thought it was worth bringing it to market. And they do make a lot of really, really strong, bold, interesting choices. So, yeah, I am definitely a fan of theirs for sure.
And I hope they keep that up with the they were floated on the stock market, right? They had like a public offering. And
they did. Yeah, it was
did.
Huge.
So I just hope that the vision stays the same at Devolver, because I really treasure what they're doing. They are like a really prominent, great indie publisher, and I want them to stay that way.
Well, now they got investors. They're dead to me now. It's only downhill from them from now on. So,
Speaking of Devolver, by the way, just a slight tangent. Did you play Olia? It's spelled Olija.
I did. Yes, I did.
You did, because I was playing this one. I was thinking of you. I was playing it on my Switch with the pixel art, and I was thinking, this is maybe like a Brad thing.
It seems like it would be, and I absolutely did play it for a while. It eventually rubbed me the wrong way. I got about halfway through, and I threw in the towel on it. But yeah, it is an interesting one, and it definitely has all the hallmarks. Pixel art, 2D, some action, a little bit of Souls flavor to it. A lot of boxes were checked for me, but I ended up not liking it too much.
Not quite. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Well, the final category that we've got here is, I don't want to make you blow your game of the year list here or anything like that. So how you want to handle this one is up to you. I'm looking forward to the So Videogames end of year podcast. I'm looking forward to hearing what you and Carlos bring to the table. But it seems like you can't do a game of the year podcast without talking about games of the year. I don't know. So you can answer this one any way you wish. But do you have like a list floating out there? Do you know? I mean, what your game of the year is, or how's it going?
I think I've got a pretty strong contender, but, as of course I'm doing the typical video game critic, it's December, so I need to play 42 games that I haven't gotten to yet in the next 2 weeks in order to have a comprehensive list of everything this year. I hate this time of year because there's never enough time. There's always too many games. And whenever I get to my list and I feel like this is good, the next day I want to change it. And then I read somebody else's list and I think, oh, how could I have forgotten that one? Yeah. Oh no, I forgot that one. And then it's an impossible task, right? But I do have a couple front runners. I think we haven't talked about yet. One of my biggest front runners is probably Black Book. I know you talked about it on the show.
Yep.
Seemed like you liked it. I think I probably liked it more than you did. But Black Book, to me, wow. It starts slow. It's a little bit clunky. It's definitely like lower budget. But man, that game is swinging for the fences. They are going for it. And I finished it all the way. It was much longer than I thought it was going to be. Real talk. I got to the end of chapter 1 and I'm like, oh, that was a good game. Chapter 2. Oh my God, there's more. I thought there was more. I could not believe it went on for like 15 more chapters.
Right. Isn't it like a 20-hour game or something?
Oh no, I think I probably put 80 hours into it. Something
wow.
like that. It's really long, but I loved it all the way through. I love the main character, who her name is Vasilisa. She's a Russian girl who becomes a witch, and again, it's that Eastern European thing of like the darkness and the practicality with how they approach things. Like she's dealing with the devil, no bones about it. Like she's, she's doing some evil stuff, but she's also doing some good stuff. And I love the dichotomy of having Christianity and having witchcraft in the same person, and she understands and deal with both of these systems.
Mm-hmm.
There's demons that do good things, there's demons that do bad things, there's people that do both, and like all these different choices that she comes across, and where the story goes, I just could not believe it. I was like, oh my god, they're doing this thing with the story, and they're not going to do it, and they did this thing, and it keeps going, and it just goes crazy. And oh my god, the last couple chapters, I was just couldn't believe it, could not believe it, John. I just was like, wow. I feel like I'm the only person on earth who's played this game for this long, but I wish everybody could see this
right.
Because this is incredible. I love the boldness of what they did in the story and where it went, and you can see places where the story branches. And if it wasn't so long, I absolutely would have played it again to see the other branch. I mean, I don't know that that's going to be my choice, but wow, it's going to be absolutely near the top for me. And it's a slow starter. It's a little clunky, but boy, if you get into this one, what a humdinger. I love this one so much.
Right, I've played this one. I'm on chapter 2. I've done the mill, and I was doing the 3 things that you have to do. We have to go to like a bathhouse, and you have to pick off these tasks.
Oh yes.
And I enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed the thick atmosphere that it has, and the writing, the really gnarly writing, all of those myths and legends, and the dark forest creatures, and the whole it does feel like a peek through the looking glass at this Slavic mythology. It's a bit Brothers Grimm Gothic, and it's very interesting. But how did you? I think the reason I maybe stalled on this one was the card game.
Oh, interesting. What did you not care for that part?
I didn't quite get there. With the card game. I felt like I was doing the cards to try and get my next little bite of story, if you know what I mean. But that's probably a me thing. I did have the same period of adjustment with Slay the Spire and especially with Griftlands, a game that I rate highly this year, a card game. I never quite got through the pain barrier with Black Book in terms of just learning the systems and fully comprehending what my cards were doing and the synergies that you need in card games like this. But hearing you talk about it the way that you do makes me want to give it a second swing.
Yeah, it's definitely not the most complicated or the most well-polished system. There's definitely some abuses that you can get into, and there's little loops and things that are maybe not the best. But I feel like it worked pretty well, and it was kind of like you said. Like I was enjoying the card battles, but for me, the real draw was the mythology. It was definitely the story and the characterization. So that was enough of a pull. I mean, I felt like that was more than enough to shore up a little bit of a weaker card game. So if you come to it just for the card game, you might be disappointed. But if you are like interested in the lore and these Slavic legends and like you said, the Brothers Grimm, the darkness of the story, like that part to me was just like great, like A+, like all the way through. So that really pulled me through. I do agree with you though, but yeah, I did find some aspects where I could game the system a little bit. I found some combos that work better than others, and it wasn't like I was constantly finding new mechanics or anything like that. But the rest of the game definitely made up for it for me.
Well, I've heard you talk about that one on your show, and I went and got it. Your enthusiasm rubbed off on me, and your word goes a long way with me. I still have it on my Mac. I have to optimize my space quite often in my Steam library, and I've not uninstalled Black Book. It's still there because I remembered your words ringing in my ears, and I've determined to give this one a second swing. That's high praise, and I want to see what's there.
It's not an easy play. I'll say it's not an easy play, but boy, I rarely play a game that's 80 hours, and I felt like every minute was worth it. That ending and where it goes, oh man, bananas! It's so crazy. Anyway, okay, enough of that one. Another leading game for me is Unavowed. I played that on Switch this year. Have you played Unavowed?
I have it from a sale, and I haven't opened it.
Oh man, this is another one that I just love. It's another point and click, and it's weird that I've brought up a couple point and clicks on the show because I generally don't like that genre.
Right.
Moon logic, frustrating puzzles, etc., etc. But this one it's an urban fantasy, and I love the writing. The writing is just top tier. Great characters, great voices. It's broken up into a series of like 6 different they're like murders, and so you have to solve each little murder, and then at the end they all kind of stitch together. But there's magic, there's monsters, there's mythology, but there's also like detective work. There's also just like personal stories. I like it because it does away with most of the moon logic. I think there was only one puzzle in the entire game that I felt like was a little bit moony for me. And the rest was very straightforward. If you know detective games and you can figure stuff out, and they limit the number of things you interact with so that, even if you're stuck, you only have like 3 or 4 items, and so one of those has got to work.
Yeah,
and so that
smart. Yep.
Yeah, it's a smart design. I really love the design a lot. But just the story was fantastic. I thought all the individual cases were super interesting. Characters, I really grew to love them by the end of the story. And I mean, I'm sure you're detecting a theme here. Story and characters are really important to me. And this one was so good. I mean, I hope that they do a sequel. I think this stuff is great. So I would definitely pick that as one of my front runners this year for sure.
Mm-hmm. You're giving me a lot of games that I have to add to my list now. I'm stacking up here.
Another gimme, the Death Stranding director's cut. I've already played Death Stranding. It was like my number 2 the year it came out.
Right, you dared to go back into Death Stranding.
Yeah, I love Death Stranding. I do, and this is the rare case where I think the story is garbage. Absolute garbage. Just twaddle all the way through. But man, that gameplay is so compelling. I love the physical act of playing this game, just like crawling up the mountains and, got stuff on your backpack and bringing boxes and driving around. Just the sheer act of doing something productive, of helping people, of delivering things, of reuniting the country is so necessary and so timely in today's era. I feel like just doing that, like not even fighting, not shooting anybody, just driving around. Here's your pizza. I'm glad you like it. I'm glad to bring it to you. I did something good for the day. It's such a weird, small thing, and it seems so tedious on its surface, but so rewarding. So I do love the Death Stranding director's cut. Love the new stuff is pretty neat.
Did you go back in with your post-game save and just carry on?
No, I started absolutely from scratch.
Okay, so you went back into the story.
Yep, I did, and I'm skipping the story, honestly. Whenever a story comes up, X to skip, and I skip it all because I really don't care about the story. But I wanted to see where the new stuff was sprinkled in, how quickly you got some of the new stuff. I didn't know how I would go back and find what was new, the new missions and such. So I'm glad I did. I really wanted to replay it, and I think the early hours of that game are almost the best because even though you don't have all the gear, but it's the most peaceful and it's the most idyllic. So I really like those hours. I don't regret going in fresh, and I'm really having a good time with that as well. And let's see, Monster Hunter Rise.
Going back to that one, I think I might go back in with the post game though. I think I might go back in and just do deliveries and just play with some of those new toys.
It's so peaceful. If you do, I would be very curious to see how the game gives you that stuff. Whether they just show up in your inventory or how you go about getting some of those unlocks. I'd be curious. So let me know how that goes. A couple more real quickies. I think Monster Hunter Rise has to be a front runner for me just because it's so mechanically solid. We talked about that game already. And I think probably the last one I might choose as a potential... I really had a good time with Little Nightmares 2. Did you play Little Nightmares 2?
I dabbled and it didn't stick for me. But I've heard a lot of people talking about how much they loved that one this year.
Yeah, it was good. I don't know that it's going to take the front runner spot for me, but I feel like the aesthetics were on point. They cleaned up a lot of the pain points from the first game where the puzzles were much more intuitive. Controls felt better. The themes were just as strong. And it was just a really, really well executed package all the way through. I don't usually go in for horror games because I get too scared, honestly. But this one was right on the cusp of that. I could play it and I wasn't too scared, but it was still pretty creepy. And it just checked all the boxes for me. Just a really, really nicely done package. So those are my picks. I don't know which one of those is going to take it, but it's probably going to be one of those. And I'm probably going to have a couple more. I've got a whole bunch of games lined up for the rest of the 2 weeks or whatever it is until Christmas time. So I got more things to go through, but I think those are probably my front runners. What about you, John? What's on your short list this year?
I've got like a list that I keep throughout the year. I'm a big list maker and a big ranker and a big fan of all that stuff. So I do start noting games down early in the year. And some of them come and go, at the start of the year, I think I played Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and I was like, wow, this was spectacular, but it didn't have the magic ingredient, but it just lingered on that list and then slowly slid off it as it topped up across the year, But, I mean, the top 5 that I'm currently playing with in a list of, 10 or so, I've talked about a couple of them. Chicory is going to be up there for me. That was a really memorable one. I loved the whole thing. I'm just taken aback by that one. It really surprised me. Solar Ash, which just came out a couple weeks ago, maybe even just a week ago. Oh, that's a contender.
Yeah, I got to put more time into that one, but that one's going to be near the top too.
Yeah, that one, just something about the way that guy stitches his ideas together into something whole and resonant. It's just something about his world, about Alex Preston's world, and the aesthetic that he creates. And the movement, and it reminded me of The Pathless, which came out this time last year with that fast movement and that that kind of modular story where you find bits of it all over the place. So you're moving, you're enjoying movement, you're finding bits of story. Great boss battles. It's just so engaging and whole as a package, and it's just got the aesthetic is just a ribbon tied onto it, really. I've got Sable. This is a game that I was waiting for, the open world exploration game, combat free. There's a bit of a running theme in some of my games of the year here, and they're combat free and story led, with a little bit of exploration going on. And Sable was just such a chill time, such a beautiful mood, like the music and the sound and story. Did you get to this one?
It is it's on my short list. That's one that I was really excited for, and it fell in a time when I didn't have time, but it's on my hurry up and play this before the end of the year mode. So I definitely want to check that one out. Right.
I'm curious what you'll think of it, because in some ways it's a very casual and light experience, Like, it's just exploring and talking to people, and you pick up a couple of little missions, basically just fetch questy, but the world is so rich, and the characters that you talk to are so interesting, and it's just so thoughtfully constructed. Everything in the game has been done with care, and I know that it was like a glitchy, buggy launch, and so that kind of swims against what I'm saying, but just in the thought processes, the writing, the design, the structure of the whole thing, the sense of freedom that you get as this young girl going out into the world to try and find out who she is, and the way that the society around her and the layers of it across history, it adds up to something so special. It was a real mood. There's often a game like that at the end of the year where I think back to the time that I played it. When you have a song that comes across your path at a significant time in your life, and whenever you hear that song, you're taken back. It just kind of sticks with you as a sense memory. Some of my favourite games are like that, and Sable's very much like that. It was a really good time and really intoxicating experience. But then again, I've got Inscryption, which is unlike anything that I've played before. It's a card game. We've both got card games high at the top of our list here. Did you say Inscryption's on your 2 playlist?
It is on my list. I very rarely play PC games, but I feel like it's been so celebrated and so noteworthy that I feel like I have to play it. So that is, again, on my short list. I've actually my short list is maybe not so short. I've got a lot of gameplay ahead of me, but that is one that I've got my eye on for sure.
Right. If you do play Inscryption, my advice for that one would be to push on through to a point at which I don't know how to say it without spoiling it. Just keep going with it.
Okay.
It goes to places that I just did not expect. Just the amount of imagination in that game, it blew up the formula. And it's so good as a card game. I think that you will probably enjoy just the cards. It's good enough. The card game is good enough. But there is so much in it. I mean, I felt like my Inscryption episode this year on Gaming in the Wild was not great because I was taking such pains to not spoil it, and it's just hard to talk about the game without talking about the game, which is kind of what you have to do, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I listened to that exact show, and you sold me on it, absolutely, and I do appreciate you not spoiling things. It seems like there is quite a bit to spoil here, so I think you did a good job. So I will just say, as a listener, you did sell me without spoiling anything, so good job on that.
Good to hear. Yeah, I went and bought everything that Daniel Mullins has done after I finished Inscryption. I went onto Steam, I bought all of his games, and I fully intend to play all of them. I'm so invested in him as an imaginative force in game design after playing that game. I just want to play his whole back catalogue, and I can't wait to see what he does next. The final game that I've got out of my 5, it's one of those ones that comes in a grey area because it came out initially last year, but then it was ported onto everything this year. Where do you stand on those ones on Game of the Year debates?
Those count for me. As long as it is released in some new way, like, for example, the Death Stranding Director's Cut or Unavowed came out on PC a while ago, but it hit Switch for the first time this year. I count those as this year, so I don't make that hard line. Okay, and I think I know your opinion on this one, but this is a game that I played towards the start of the year. It's a card game again. I played through it, I think 5 times in the end, beginning to end. Story-led, Signs of the Sojourner. Wow. Okay. Interesting. I know you're a big fan of this one. I think you're definitely more of a fan than I am. But I do love all the card games. I did try this one. Didn't make the cut for me, but I'd love to hear why you like it so much.
Right. So this one is a card game. It's a deck battler, but it's not really It's a combat-free game. You're not slaying goblins or killing bats or using your sword card or anything like that. It's a matching cards game, so you are in conversation when you play cards. Every time you play a card, you have to hope that you have in your hand a symbol, like a circle, a triangle, or a square, or a diamond, that will match the card that has been played towards you from your conversation partner. And if you have the right card, if they play a triangle, you play a triangle, they'll smile, you can tell that the conversation's going well, you'll get a new piece of dialogue. And so your prize for winning is not crystals or experience points or levels or more weapons. It's dialogue, it's content, it's the story, it's the experience, it's connection. And that's so interesting to me as a mechanic. I absolutely love the cooperative feel of it and the fact that it's actually about cooperation, it's about communication. And I think when I was playing this game, there was a lot of divisive stuff going on in the world, with US politics and Brexit and COVID and all of these kind of clashing cultural forces, that misunderstanding has just seemed so pervasive and difficult in life. And I loved that Signs of the Sojourner is about that, and it's about trying to push through difference of opinion, difference of modes of speaking, and it's about finding symmetry, striving for harmony in order to get the best outcomes that you can. And so the gentility of that as a concept really stuck with me. It was really special to me, that one. And the story is great too. I mean, it's non-linear. You can choose where you go on a map. On an overworld, you pick up different cards from different people. You go to different corners of the map where people speak different shapes. And you have to build your deck so that you can communicate with as many people as possible. It's just a very interesting process of learning to understand different people and to get the best outcomes. And to get all of the outcomes that I wanted, I had to go around the map a lot of times and specialize. Like at the top right-hand side of the map, they speak in logical thoughts and they're quite stern. They have squares and diamonds and they're quite hardcore. Different areas of the map, they have circles and they're very empathic and they're very nice to you, basically. And so you have to kind of learn all of these different ways of talking in the game. And on top of all of that, the game's themes of ecology, it's a post-apocalyptic game in a way, but I would really hesitate to use that term. It's definitely about a post-environmental, a post-climate change human society and what that might look like. People are on hard times, things have gone pretty wrong. There's not a lot of water, there's not a lot of food, but people are working together. And so you go from town to town, picking up things to buy in your shop, and everyone's cooperating, everyone's just trying to have a good life. And the conversations that go on in that game just really stuck with me. There was a generous spirit in that game that I think is very rare. And the way that the mechanics tied with the story and the beautiful hand-drawn artwork, great music. It's the whole package for me. I loved that one.
Excellent. I love when you connect with a game like that, when you're able to find like the deeper themes and relate it to things that are going on in the world in your life. It's always a nice treat. So I'm glad that one connected with you, for sure. Yeah,
it was a great one. Well, we've now gone over 2 hours. This is quite the epic Game of the Year chat. Thank you so much for giving me the time and for being up for the talk.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be back. I love your show, so it's a kind of a thrill for me to be on the show that I love so much, and it's a pleasure to talk to you. So thank you for having me on with my wildly inflammatory and divisive opinions.
Well, I think I'm going to get some flack for the Returnal talk as well. And I'm looking forward to your Game of the Year episode. I guess you and Carlos have a few more games to get through from the sounds of things, but do you have an idea of when that one might come out?
Yeah, we need to get through a couple more games, like you said, and I think next week is going to be us focusing on the demos. There's actually a whole bunch of demos on Xbox right now, not that you'd ever know, because they completely haven't hyped it or talked about it at all, which is a shame because there's a lot of really cool indie games up right now. So check those out. They're still going to be there by the time the show goes up. But the week after that is going to be our Game of the Year show. So in about 2 weeks, we'll have our final year-end wrap-up of everything 2021.
Fantastic. So any listeners of the show that aren't checking out So Videogames, you definitely should. It's on all the podcast services. Brad and Carlos have a great chemistry and a great repartee and a great taste in games. So make sure you do go and check it out. And thanks very much, Brad.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Have a good Christmas and a good New Year. Cheers.
Cheers.
So I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Brad. I certainly did. I really do like Brad's podcast, and I really do like Brad's take on gaming. You should follow Brad Gallaway on Twitter if you enjoyed this show. He is Brad Gallaway, all A's, no O's, on Twitter. And you can also follow the So Videogames podcast on Twitter at So Videogames. It's a great show, it really is. Brad and Carlos really burn through a lot of games, and they always have interesting things to say about them. I'll be back next week with another show. I think it will be another Games of the Year episode. I'm still sorting out the schedule, so I'm not sure who exactly will be on the show, but I do know that I've got 3 or 4 more great guests lined up. So if you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more to come. If you would like to stay in touch with me on Twitter, you can find me at Gaming in the Wild. I'm also on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch as Gaming in the Wild, so there are lots of places that you can come and find me and tell me that I'm wrong about Returnal. And there is also the option to join that Patreon and support the show at patreon.com/gaminginthewild if you would like to do so. Thanks very much for listening, and extra special thanks to Brad for being such a great guest and a great podcaster. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye-bye for now.